Yeah.
Let me call the meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission to order. And Ms. Carter, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bone? Mr. Cope?
Here.
Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Secretary Hargett?
Here.
Ms. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Isaacs?
Here.
Mr. Jarvis?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Kinsey?
Here.
Ms. Tobin?
Here.
Treasurer Lillard? Dr. Nixon? Mayor Wharton? Comptroller Wilson? And Mr. Wilson.
Here.
We have a chair. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Wow.
Once again, let me welcome all of you and thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be with us. We have quite a full agenda today, and we also have the annual meeting between the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and the State Board of Education. So we will be very cognizant of your time. Dr. Rhoda, would you recognize any special guests we have?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, and all guests. Yeah, just a couple of people to acknowledge for being here. One is Shirley Raines, President Emeritus of the University of Memphis. Thank you for being here, Shirley. And Carrie McGinnis is with us, who is a member of THEC board, but is also a member of the Joint Audit Committee and was here earlier, so I'm glad she stayed with us. And Carrie, your distinction with this group?
Yes, sir. I was the first Tennessee Board of Regents student member appointed to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission in 1994 by former Governor Nan McWhirter.
So, welcome back.
Full circle.
So, circle of life. Yeah. And one other special guest, which I'll mention a little bit more about later, but I do want to acknowledge that Randy Boyd is with us at the table, and you're aware Randy has been with us here at THEC, but he's been the special advisor to the governor for higher education this year. And Randy, glad you're here now, and I'll mention your name later.
Thank you. Dr. Raines, always good seeing you. Dr. Raines, as many of you know, is one of my favorite individuals since I'm from the University of Memphis. Thank you. I'd like to have adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as
So
presented?
moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? It's approved. Also, approval of the November minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Second? Second. Been moved and second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, next is the chairman's report, which will be incredibly short. We had an excellent work session this morning. I would like once again to compliment the staff who does just a tremendous job. And they did a great job this morning. It was very, very productive. Dr. Rhoda did not add anything to it whatsoever. Everyone else did. But it was really a great work session. We really appreciate all the efforts that went into it. Thank you, staff. Dr. Rhoda, your report.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my remarks will be brief, but I do want to hit a few highlights. And I agree, I thought the discussion this morning was, the presentations were great and the discussion were great. And that kind of leads to, I guess, the first point I'd like to make in my comments this morning is kind of like the context for where we are that reflected in this meeting. We've had an amazing year in Tennessee higher education. And this is where Randy Boyd comes in. It was about this time last year when Governor Haslam announced the drive to 55, and he is the governor wanting higher education to be a part of the state agenda. The whole idea is to upgrade and build the educational attainment of Tennesseans for their sake as well as the sake of the state. So Randy, of course, has been the driving force in that and has been very much a part not just of the THEC staff, but working with the Board of Regents, working with UT, working with Claude Presnell and the independent schools. And just what has, we'll find out Monday night with the governor's state of the state, but all the work that has gone, all the planning that has taken place, all the avenues that have been pursued, I would put largely hold Randy responsible for that. So I just want to thank you, Randy, for really bringing us along and working together as we really never have before. So if I could.
We get a moment of rebuttal.
Yes, you do.
Quick rebuttal. So the governor's staff sent me to a couple of National Governors Association meetings, which is something they don't want to do. So I was kind of the low man on the totem pole. Hey, Randy, why don't you go? Because they're normally not all that informative. But it was inspiring in one respect. Every single state across the country has the exact same issues we do. They have low attainment, high goals. They've got all the same readiness issues, access issues, reaching out to adult issues. But in every single case, what they were missing was a leader that had articulated a mission, that was willing to put his name on the Drive to 55. And our governor is doing that. So, it's great to talk about all this stuff, but the thing that makes it different in Tennessee than all these other states is we got a governor that's backing us up. I mean, we are one of the most important, if not the most important thing in his agenda right now. So that's a huge thing. Second thing, the governor will be making what I think is, I'm hopeful, will be a very bold and profound speech on Monday night that directly affects everybody in this room and the work that we do. I'm excited about it. Can't wait. I think everybody's thinking about the Super Bowl on Sunday, but no matter what happens there, it's not really going to change outcomes in Tennessee. But the biggest event over the next week is what the governor says on Monday night. But every single idea that he has came from people in this room, the folks at THEC. My job was only as a channeler, just to listen to the brilliant ideas from this team and pass them back on to him and hopefully advocate for him in an articulate way. And the last comment is just that we talked about this last night at dinner, trying to get my Winston Churchill quote correct. But this is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, but it's maybe the end of the beginning. We're just getting started using the Drive to 55 metaphor. We're pulling the car out of the garage that we built, but we've got a long road left to go. So I think we're going to have a great start, but it's just a start. Anyways, it's been a pleasure working with all of you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you. All right. So I had some other remarks about that, but I think Randy said it very well. No, I will say one thing that Randy brought to us. I mean, we've just had the breadth and depth of new ideas, new individuals, new groups passing through the discussions about higher education have just been tremendous, both increasing in breadth and depth. And there's some funny stories that go along with that, but Randy has been responsible for, just broadening the way we look at things. So let me just end on that. One of the initiatives that we started a little while ago is sales. And this plays, well, and I'd like to ask Mike to come over and talk about it. As a little bit of segue to that, point that was made this morning as well as demonstrated is that going about the Drive to 55, it is not just a single shot. It's multi-dimensional, and it's about readiness, it's about access, it's about completion, all these things. So in that context, the sales program that is underway is one that I'd like, maybe we've told you about it before, but it bears discussion again. So, Mike?
Thank you, Dr. Rhoda and Chairman Johnson, members of the Commission. I'm going to give a quick update about the status of a program we've introduced you to before, seamless alignment and integration of learning support. Essentially what this program does is we make a couple of realizations. One, there's no way we reach our Drive to 55 goal if 74% of our students are requiring remediation. There's just no way to do that. And that the way we are doing remediation in Tennessee possibly needs to change. The good news is our institutions were on the leading edge of reinventing math remediation, actually almost for the better part of the last decade. The key point that might need to change and that the sales program gets at is, when do you deliver that instruction? Do you wait for students to show up in their freshman year, or do you maybe go down to their senior year of high school and recognize that in that high-touch K-12 environment, we stand the best chance of addressing what is often a very deep mathematical deficiency? So, with that in mind, last year with funding from the governor's online innovation budget, we expanded what had been a pilot program at Chattanooga State that served 600 students statewide to 6,000 students. In fact, we went from 600 students to 6,000 students in 90 days, which when we look back on the fact that we were able to accomplish that, we sometimes wonder if we maybe would have done it knowing how hard it was going to be. But we're glad we did because we have our first semester results in now, and I want to share those with you. First, a look at the expansion. As you can see, all 13 community colleges across the state, varying amounts of penetration in each local community, but I think we have a general representation of our students. Each fall at TBR last year, 11,800 students required mathematics remediation. We hope we served 6,000 of those students this fall. In that fall semester, here were our results. Of the 6,000 students, 2,252, which is about 40%, completely finished all remediation. They will never take a math remedial course at a Tennessee Board of Regents institution. They will show up and enter credit-bearing math directly. To put this in perspective, these students scored below a 19 on the ACT 6 months before. That's remarkable. The metric that we do gravitate towards is this, though. Had those students entered remediation, they would have been paying tuition money, the financial aid would have been going to those courses, yet they wouldn't have been receiving credit. Those 2,252 students saved collectively $3.4 million in tuition. And to remind you, the investment in sales in the initial round was $1.1 million. So we have made Tennessee taxpayers their money back for this investment, and I think that's a very good metric to aspire to. Finally, just a look ahead at what we're going to be doing this spring and hopefully next year. This spring, so we had 2,200 complete in the fall. Well, we're filling those seats all over again this spring. We had 2,400 new students start sales last week. We have submitted our requests for next year. We stand by to hear from the governor if that will be in the budget, but we anticipate being able to serve 12,000 students across the state. Again, with an 11,800 student need for remediation, we truly begin to start asking ourselves, are we going to be able to eliminate remedial math for first-time freshmen in Tennessee? And I think the answer is we are moving towards that, certainly. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Mike, you use the word recruiting for fall. I think of it more as a mechanical thing. They take the ACT, they make below a 19, they're signed up. But it's not that way. I mean, you're actually having to do some sales here, not S-A-I-L, S-A-L-E, to what, local education boards or what's that part of?
That's a great question because to get to those 6,000 students and then ultimately 12,000, there's a lot involved, and there is a lot of selling sales. It involves the LEA being willing to take on the commitment that this program involves. We require them to make some assurances to us around access to technology, around fidelity to the program. Sales works if you implement sales. It does not work if you freelance. And you really have to adhere to the model. And some schools are not comfortable with doing that, and we are comfortable with their discomfort. We just don't ask them to become sales schools.
Okay.
Is this delivered in the high school?
Yes, sir. This is delivered in the high school by the K-12 teacher. The higher ed faculty are there as a support network when the K-12 teacher feels like they need a little extra. But this is their course, and it leads to a very interesting point that actually we've heard from our Department of Education who've gone to some sales classrooms, and Pam went with us to one of them, and they said, well, why aren't we just teaching all of our math like this? Which we kind of said, oh, that's a fair question. But we know that in this modality, teaching remedial math via this method has worked.
Thank you.
My question, I noticed in your first graph, it looked like Knox County and Pellissippi State was near the bottom. Is that because of the reluctance of the local school system? They score higher? What would cause that dynamic compared to some of the other numbers that seem very high?
Absolutely. When you see low numbers here, in the case of Pellissippi, I'd say Motlow, Columbia, and Southwest as well, those 4 low number spots are all a function of first-year logistics and nothing more. And that was we had to scale up quickly. Those who were ready went. Pellissippi is the one community college that actually doesn't use the suite of software that sales uses. They use another suite. It took us a few weeks to kind of iron out how that would articulate. You will see their numbers grow greatly next year.
So there's no hesitation on the local?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, we've really not experienced any hesitation from any LEA. When they see the results, when you have data, it's a lot easier to talk to someone about a program. They're instantly sold. Logistics are the hindrance here. Availability of technology and ultimately sometimes teachers and the ability to take 4 sections of seniors and split them into this suite. That's difficult, and we're working through those problems.
So, Mike, would be the same with Southwest?
Absolutely. No, yes, sir, absolutely. And we've worked deeply. So our Memphis schools in the commercial appeal ran a really great story on this. I think Memphis is another area that you will see grow more than exponentially next year. And also, some of the school district changeovers last year affected the logistics as well. Obviously, we won't be dealing with that this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And obviously, we're excited about this and see a lot of potential. Absolutely. One last item, Mr. Chair. We have a staff member who is leaving us, and I want to recognize her, Catherine Meyer. Catherine, if you would, stand up. Catherine has been with us and been part of the core team that's working with our First to the Top initiative, which is winding down. But Catherine that's the bad news. The good news is Catherine is staying in Tennessee higher education. She will be in the administration of Columbia State Community College and will be the grants director. So, Catherine, thanks for your work here, and
Thank you, Ken.
she will be in touch.
Rich, thank you for your report, and let me echo what you said about Randy. We do and tremendously appreciate your contributions, and we will continue to provide lunch for you since we know that's the reason that you're here. That would be your pay for the rest of this. Now we will have the systems report, and we will start with the Tennessee Board of Regents. Dr. Dentley, please.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rhoda, members of the Commission, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. For those of you I have not had the chance to meet before, my name is Tristan Dentley. I'm the new Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs of the Tennessee Board of Regents as of last August. So it's my pleasure to talk to you today about what's going on in the system. Let me begin by going back to the Chancellor's report at the last meeting. I think there he referred to some changes in leadership and some searches that were happening across our system. It's good to see Dr. Raines here with us today. The search for the new president at the University of Memphis is now underway. The committees are formed and they are actively recruiting and reviewing applications. Dr. William Seymour has now been appointed as the president at Cleveland State Community College. That search, I think, was underway at our last meeting. And between the two meetings, Dr. Hall at Austin Peay State University has announced that he will be leaving Austin Peay at the end of May. He's taken a position as president at Mercy College in New York. And so the search for that new president will be cranking up very quickly. The job description has been approved by the board, and that search will be happening very quickly to have somebody in place so that transfer can happen as seamlessly as possible. So that's kind of an update about where we are as far as that kind of leadership goes. Let me talk at least some about some of the initiatives that are happening across the system. I think if you were here this morning in the work session, then one of the things that really resonates out of the new model is how important it is to try to optimize the things that we're doing to improve the way in which students can move through what we currently have. The drive to 55, we know, cannot be solved simply by bringing more students in the front door. It largely will be solved by not only bringing those students in, but helping them succeed. And it's going to require a really coordinated effort to do that. There's no magic bullet, as Dr. Rhoda said. So let me talk about some of the things that are underway and some of the things that are about to be underway for us. Largely, this is around a coordinated, system-wide approach to aligning the system around some basic core principles. Initially, the core principle is about helping students to make the choice about what it is that they will study, about architecting that choice in such a way that we empower them to make a more informed choice from the beginning, so we can get them on a pathway and get them moving towards a successful graduation. It's not to say that those kinds of things haven't been done before, but up until now, it's often the case that students arrive at campuses and they don't largely know what it is that they want to do. I must admit that when I was their age, I don't know that I knew exactly what I wanted to do either. But that's part of the issue, the fact that as the systems are normally set up, we rely on people really knowing what they want to do and then empowering them to do that. That works if they do. But if they don't, and a significant proportion of the students who arrive really don't have that good plan, then it's less clear. Then they end up kind of wandering or changing from one major to another, and often those things are a hindrance to them graduating. What we do know definitively is that no choice is a really bad choice. Not choosing your major, being undecided, is really not a recipe for success. So this is about then trying to architect that choice and trying to build ways in which our system fits together well. We have the TCATs, we have our community colleges, we have our four-year schools, and finding ways in which the programs at all of those institutions fit together well so that students can begin perhaps in one program, move to another place as they progress through, and that all of those programs naturally dovetail with one another. These are important ways to help people move through. Similarly, once they're on that pathway, finding ways in which we can make that pathway really clear so they know which way they're going. Finding ways in which we can recognize how we can make sure that the courses that they take and they need to take are really offered in ways in which they are able to take them, and finding ways in which we can have technologists to recognize if they're on those pathways or if they're not, for us to intervene as they move off. These are all part of that general picture of helping people move through. So just a couple of things that are underway along those lines, and I really have to stress that all of this is really very much informed by a very close adherence to what it is that the data says. Finding ways to model what it is that we're going to do, and finding ways in which we can use technology to inform that. So the first of those is an analysis of what we do in our system shows that we teach about 8,000 courses every semester across the system. And it's important to have that kind of diversity of course offerings, a lot of programs for people to do. Those 8,000 courses comprise about 1 million student head count. What's surprising, I think, is that you only need 30 of those courses to comprise 500,000 head count. So more than half of the student enrollment is in a very compact set of courses. And now you know that, you can probably guess what they are. So it's very important then to think about how it is we deliver those courses, what the format is, what the pedagogy is, what the curricular structure is. And so we challenged the faculty across our system to take a good, hard, fresh look at the way in which those courses are offered. We've already heard of the fact that that kind of approach is one that has some pretty profound kinds of impacts. So the sales program itself is an outgrowth of work at Cleveland State and Chattanooga State some years ago that really took a fresh look at how to deliver freshman mathematics and developmental mathematics. I'm very happy to say that they were just the winners of a Legacy Bellwether Award exactly for that work. And that work, you can see, has influenced where we are now. So this idea of course redesign is a very powerful one. We challenged teams of faculty across the system to re-envisage these courses. We have 120 team proposals that we are right now winnowing down to probably 60 or something of that number that we will end up funding. But that's about 600 faculty across our campus who are actively right now looking at new ways, new pedagogies, new initiatives to be able to deliver these crucial 30 courses, which are really at the heart of everything that all of our degrees play off. And I hope you can imagine the impact that will have over time. The other is to continue this work around how we deliver learning support. As Mike shared, a very significant proportion of the students who come to us more poorly prepared in math, reading, or writing. That is really a recipe for their success. So how do we work with that? Over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a lot of work in thinking of ways in which we can deliver what we now call learning support rather than a formal lecture-based approach to developmental education. All of the data suggested that really was not a good recipe for success, and indeed it wasn't. This new approach that we have clearly has advantages. What we now see by looking at the data again is that where that learning support in and of itself is significantly better than simply offering a lecture-based class, having a first you do this, then you do that kind of approach to remediation really doesn't produce as good of results as if we enroll the students in a credit-bearing class and then require them to also have a significant level of supplementary instruction as they're doing that. And so that's the new model that we are investigating. There have been some schools across the nation, Austin Peay being one of those, that has had a significant level of success in implementing this model. It really has some profound kinds of impact on the success of those students. And so we've actually put in a full implementation date on that change, that by fall 2015, across the Tennessee Board of Regents, we will move to co-requisite remediation. And that, again, we believe will have a very significant level of impact. So those are two examples of how we're kind of implementing that broader picture over the coming months. I'm sure you'll hear of other things too. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions? Yes, go ahead.
I did have a question. You were talking about helping your students make that declarative decision early on in their college career. If I'm an engineering major or if I'm a business major, at what point in my 4 years of college do I take that first business or engineering class?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and that's part of this. That's part of this overall picture as well. What we now know is that the data very much supports that students do better when they are studying what they think they chose.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? So it doesn't seem like it's rocket science, but it's
They buy in.
Right.
They buy in early.
Exactly. So it's often been the case that the way in which we sort of arrange curricula is that we sort of take care of the general education requirements first, and then move into more specialized things. Sometimes that may actually be a very good plan. I think there's no sort of one-size-fits-all here which we can really point to, but what we also know is that if it's possible for students to be studying their introductory classes to these courses, these programs of study that they've chosen, then this is a significant recipe for success. So that's one of the things that we're doing, is finding ways in which we can arrange these curricular paths, first of all, so that they early on involve introductory courses so people feel like they're building towards something, but also so that those curricular pathways actually respect one another. So if you are, say you're maybe moving along a degree in business, but then you decide that actually you'd like to be an accountant instead, that you don't have to begin all over again.
That's right.
You can just kind of branch out. So this is a coordinated kind of approach.
Tristan, if anybody ever taught a course on ancient history of educational philosophy, they would know that 50 years ago, when some of the people in this room went to college, if you were a business major, your freshman year, you were taking 1 or 2 business classes. And we have gotten away from that, because when my children went to college, they would be 2 years into their college degree before they then declared their major and began taking courses they thought that they wanted to study. The trend was somehow we got away from that. We went more to core educational things for the first freshman and sophomore year anyway. But if you want them to buy in early on and you want them to stick with a path and to know if the path is the correct one for them, it seems like courses in their declared area of interest the freshman year would be a great way to start that path, to the extent that it's possible. Anyway, it's just interesting. It used to be done that way, and somehow we trended away from it. But I think it's probably a good idea to look back at that.
Well, and that's the nice thing. I think two comments about that. The first is that you're right. There's a number of things which once upon a time used to be standard practice that we moved away from, and that now we seem to be finding ourselves to return to. The difference, I think, now is that once upon a time when we did those things because that's what we did.
Yes.
Then we changed to something else because it felt like changing to something else was better. Now what we're doing is we're very carefully analyzing and disaggregating the data, and we can definitively say, okay, one of these feels good, the other feels different, but one of these is definitively better, and that's the one we're going to do.
And it's not just governors and legislature and people in the community that want our students to get out of college in 4 years. Parents want them done in 4 years.
3.
Or 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think what you're doing is a good plan.
Dr. Dennis, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we will have the University of Tennessee report. Dr. Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present the UT system report today. Dr. Rhoda wanted me to try a British accent, but I don't think I can. I'm not sure I can pull it off. I don't know. Not watching enough Downton Abbey. I can do sort of a Super Bowl analogy, though, Super Bowl week. I'm the third string today. I'm India Lane. I'm the Assistant Vice President in the Academic Affairs and Student Success Office. So I'm stepping in for Dr. President DiPietro, who is traipsing off in the Galapagos Islands with tortoises or something. And much less exotically, my immediate boss and Vice President Katie High is back in Knoxville on jury duty. So I'm here today, and in the spirit of a third string quarterback, you only send them in with a few plays that they know how to deliver. So I'm actually excited that I'm able to talk a little bit about two initiatives that our office has been pretty heavily involved with, as well as THEC and TBR. And first, UT is kind of quarterbacking, along with THEC, TBR, and TECUA, a significant initiative to set up tools for transfer students to do both a intelligent forward transfer, as well as to be able to award some students who have already transferred from a 2-year school to a 4-year school an associate's degree, or what we call reverse transfer. And that's been a really interesting project to learn about. I think Mike and I both were in this situation where we were sort of like, what is this all about? And now we're believers. The reverse transfer degree is one, it's a credential that becomes very valuable for some students. Two, it's a motivator for students to complete their 4-year degree. And the information that you can gather both for analysis and for an individual student trying to make a transfer decision, that these tools are going to be really, really exciting. As I speak, we're looking at the proposals for a software vendor, and within a year or so we should have the pilot schools definitely up and running, and a day will come very soon when any Tennessee student can plug in their name and unique ID and allow their transcript to be loaded into the system, and they can play with it and see what happens to their credits if they transfer to any other institution in the state. The institutions will also be able to run all of the students that have transferred from one of our community colleges to other institutions and see when they're ready for their associate's degree. So this has been a really neat initiative. Thank you to Randy for helping us get some state funding for this, as we also have some Lumina funding, which is really exciting. And Gloria Gamble and the folks at the Center for Business and Economic Research are also leading this effort at UT and in Knoxville. The other thing I'd like to mention is an update on some of the other online innovation funds that Mike mentioned that supported the sales program. Each system has received an investment in online development of courses and ideas and programs. And this year we have used those funds to explore partnerships and collaborations with two large third-party online providers, Coursera and edX. They're best known as what we call MOOC providers, or providing massive courses to tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, but we're using them for a few students at a time, relatively speaking, on our campuses to learn from those companies, from those platforms, and from the course redesign that we're doing, what lessons we can take forward in online innovation. And that's been another really fascinating project to be involved with. I'd like to thank Randy again and THEC for opening the doors to those types of opportunities. The UT and TBR have also been working with other state systems that are exploring the same types of platforms. I know that both Tristan and Randy we've all been at this multi-state meeting where we're sitting around the table with the University of Texas system, Cal State, Penn State, a number of groups, University System of Georgia, that are trying to solve the same problems. Again, they're trying to leverage new tools and new ideas to do big things. It's a little early in our pilot program, but we delivered 2 pilot courses in the fall, and we have 2 courses underway this spring. At this point, I can certainly say we're not harming our students. Our very early and very small results from the fall courses even suggested that one of the Coursera-delivered courses had a much higher success rate than the traditional or control course that we were looking at. We are seeing some ideas coming out of that sort of all over the place, how we might take our courses and programs across the state, how we can collaborate across the state. Our instructional designers are now collaborating on a regular basis, and they didn't even know each other before. So the side effects, if you will, of the project have been really exciting. Back to our UT campuses and our regular work and routine job of graduating students. I can also report for President DiPietro that we graduated over 3,100 students this past December, and I can share a few campus highlights. In December also, UT Martin received their reaffirmation from SACS, or the Southern Association for Colleges and Schools, so they've been reaccredited now for 10 years. We've also been able to appoint and hire and get on board the 14th Governor's Chair. Dr. Robert L. Davis has joined the University of Tennessee Health Science Center as the founding director for the Center in Biomedical Informatics. And he is technically also a UT ORNL Governor's Chair in Biomedical Informatics. He comes to us most directly from Kaiser Permanente in Georgia, where he led a similar center for health research. And he's going to take us into sort of this big data era in healthcare. This is a very large and growing area and discipline for both analysis of healthcare delivery and for research purposes. And he's here to lead a new center at the Health Science Center, train faculty, coordinate research, garner funding, and those types of things. A couple of other tidbits about value. We heard a lot about the budget this morning and the relatively low cost of our tuition in the state. And yes, the UT Knoxville is again one of the best values for Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine. UT Knoxville was 68th out of, and thus in the top 100 for an overall great value. And the University of Tennessee Chattanooga was very recently named one of the best colleges for veterans by U.S. News and World Report. So everyone is working hard on the campuses, and we're working hard across the systems to start to take all these amazing ideas in this amazing year and keep it moving forward. Finally, of course, we're also keeping our eye on the legislative session and making sure that we're ready to respond and act and propose legislation to continue to meet the goals and the missions of the state. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Dr. Long? You did very well with your 3 or 4 plays.
We don't do it, yes.
Very well.
Touchdown, yeah.
Then we will go to our action items. We have several action items. The first is the approval of new academic degree programs, University of Memphis Health Systems and Policy, PhD. Betty Dandridge Johnson.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, Dr. Rhoda, and members of the Commission. The materials related to this program review request is in your notebook, Agenda Item 1A. The University of Memphis proposes to offer a doctoral degree which will emphasize attention to policy opportunities within urban health systems which will, through effective policy creation, reformation, as well as implementation. Graduates of this program will be prepared not only to teach, but also to conduct innovative interdisciplinary research in a mix of health system settings. The program will also assist the School of Public Health in pursuit of their accreditation by the Council for Education on Public Health. Accreditation requirements, they must have in order to be eligible for the School of Public Health, they have to offer a Master's of Public Health as well as a minimum of 3 doctoral degrees. The school currently offers doctoral degrees in epidemiology as well as social and behavioral sciences, and students in both of these programs are making significant progress towards graduation, with the first graduates expected this year. Students are going to be taught by an interdisciplinary faculty team, which will also include affiliate faculty members from local healthcare organizations such as Methodist LeBonner Healthcare. Affiliate faculty will also be involved in serving on curriculum planning as well as dissertation committees. The proposed program requires completion of 60 semester credit hours in 6 major areas, including 9 hours devoted to the dissertation. The courses are going to be offered primarily in traditional format, with a few of the elective courses are going to be available online. Doctoral students will also be expected to work closely with 1 or more faculty mentors on research projects as they work to complete their dissertation. Also, they are going to be provided opportunities to gain teaching experience throughout their program of study. The proposed program directly complements the state master plan because it recognizes the capacity of the Memphis Research Consortium. And this consortium was established in 2010 when it combined the research resources at the University of Memphis, as well as UT Health Sciences Center, St. Jude's Research, as well as other research and business entities in Memphis. And this consortium will be promotes research and development in population health sciences as well as other areas. The Association of Schools of Public Health has estimated that 250,000 additional public health workers will be needed nationally by 2020. This proposed program will be the only doctoral level program in health policy analysis in Tennessee, so there's no concern regarding program duplication. Program funding for this program will come from campus reallocation as well as additional tuition revenues that are going to be generated by the 2 master's programs, the health administration as well as public health. Additional revenue support is going to come from the research consortium as well as private gift funds. And all of these gifts represent about 45% of all of the total revenues that will be needed to support this program. Program projections for this program are based on enrollment patterns at other peer institutions with similar programs. And you can see by the chart that 3 students are projected to enroll this fall pending approval, with 2 students will be provided graduate assistantships. And by the end of the post-approval monitoring cycle, we expect 7 graduates to have completed the program. The program is expected to have a fall 2014 site visit by the council. The University of Memphis has already been approved for candidacy status, and that was granted in October 2012, and they have 2 years from that date to actually have an on-site visit. In addition to meeting the accreditation requirements, the faculty will also monitor program as well as student learning outcomes. And in summary, this program in health systems and policy demonstrates a commitment by the university to support a school of public health. With this program, the school will seek accreditation, and program graduates will be able to conduct and translate health systems research into new interventions and policy. There were 2 consultants. One was from the University of Alabama, as well as North Texas Health Sciences Center, and they were impressed with the institutional support as well as faculty credentials. This program was approved by the Board of Regents in December 2013, and now the THEC staff recommends approval of this program at the University of Memphis. Be pleased to answer questions.
Additional questions from the commission, Ms. Johnson?
I think it's a great program. I'm curious whether I read this right. It says faculty have 5 full-time. Are those 5 full-time new faculty positions to support the program?
No, currently, there are 4 faculty on staff
Okay.
with 1 new.
One
and,
new, okay.
and per the accreditation requirements, they must have 5 full-time faculty.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
And I think the report kind of talks about how this program differentiates itself from another program in the state. Maybe you can just provide some additional information as to how this program kind of carves out a unique niche in the Memphis area.
Okay. The other program that Mr. Fisher is referring to is the Health Outcomes and Policy, and that's also a doctoral program at the UT Health Sciences Center, and that program focuses on clinical outcomes regarding pharmaceuticals. This program here is going to focus in terms of that graduates will be able to utilize large data sets to improve the healthcare systems. And then, as a result of that, they will be able to implement policy.
Any other questions? Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any additional questions? Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next action items, in fact, we have B1 and 2, and then B3 is post-secondary education authorization. Dr. Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Dr. Rhoda, members of the commission, good afternoon. The Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions recommends that the 5 institutions listed in Section 1B1 and the 158 new programs listed in Section 1B2 be granted temporary authorization and approval, respectively.
Questions for Dr. Chase?
Is this an unusually high number? Or, I mean, this seems like a lot coming through right now.
Yeah.
The last meeting, there was 152 new programs. But you have to remember, we have almost 200 institutions with over 400 locations. So this is out of state, in state, and it goes across the whole state.
So a small number of new institutions.
Yes, but
And there's some changes.
they're just adding programs.
And these are the new programs.
And some of these programs are revisions. If they make significant revisions, then they have to go back through the review process of the staff and the committee to make sure it's still compliant with the rules.
Did you reject them?
Can we reject a new program?
Were any rejected? Or?
Well, we call it deferral, and so they
Well,
and what they do is they get a letter telling them everything that has not met the minimum standard, and they get to try again next meeting.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions from the commission?
If I can.
Yes, please.
What is the minimum standard to be able to issue a certificate of completion for bartending?
Well, the minimum standard is you have to have qualified instructors, so they have to have a bartending license also. You have to have the curriculum. There's a refund policy. There's just a lot. It's a vast. But we do look and make sure that the curriculum has something to do with what they're doing, and the instructors have experience and that same credential.
Mr. Secretary, were you looking for a job?
That counts as
I don't know how to
certification,
respond to
right?
that, Chairman.
Yes.
That's a certified job. We get to count that, right?
I think we should be able to.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Yes, Ross.
Just jurisdictional question, and this is just kind of for my informational purposes. What gives THEC the jurisdiction to certify out-of-state programs?
When they come into Tennessee and create a physical presence,
Okay.
they're then under our jurisdiction.
Okay.
By statute.
By statute. Can I have a motion for approval? Second. Been moved and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's approved. Our next is proposed rules revisions.
Good afternoon. In Section 1B3 of your materials are some proposed rule revisions. The revisions seek to make changes to a number of rules within Rule Chapter 1540-01-02, as well as add a new rule, Rule .26, return of regulatory fees. Overall, the revisions serve to bring our rules more in line with our enabling legislation, provide better organization and clarity, and to memorialize some of our current practices. On January 16, 2014, the Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions voted unanimously to recommend these rule revisions to you for your consideration for the purpose of filing a notice of rulemaking hearing with the Tennessee Secretary of State. Additionally, DPSA recommends that you authorize a member of DPSA staff to conduct the rulemaking hearing as soon as possible. So with those comments, I ask for a favorable motion and vote.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Our next action item is our revised budget. I'd like to call on Dr. D. Austin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Roeder, members of the Commission. These next two items, I suppose, represent what would be a consent agenda. These were two items we went over quite heavily this morning. The first, item 1C, is a review of the 13-14 operating budgets. Thanks to Crystal Collins for that presentation. Two macro comments to make. First is that the expenditure patterns we see from our macro review are consistent with past years. There's nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, as Crystal said this morning, some of the trends we have seen as revenue sources change, shifting from state funding to tuition, have begun to stabilize. So that's a good thing. And the second component is that these budgets, well, actually that point just left me. I had another profound point, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no. All right, it'll be profound.
It'll come to me. Yeah, this happens. I hear as I get older. Well, leading up, the governor's budget is Monday night. That presentation will occur. State of the State address will be presented, and that's when we'll find out what is in the 14-15 budget. An important day, of course, for us. And that will kick off the legislative session in earnest with budget hearings scheduled these next few weeks coming up. The budgets are recommended for staff approval, and we would request action at this time.
Questions? Aaron?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Commission approve the fiscal year 2013-14 October 31 revised operating budgets, authorize the Executive Director to make appropriate technical adjustments if necessary, and transmit the revised operating budgets with the Commission's action and comments to the Department of Finance and Administration for their review and approval.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Chairman, I just wanted to say, I can tell Dr. Deaton's been around the legislature for a while because he gets up and he uses one that I've never used before. He said, this is on a consent agenda of sorts. And I've never have stood for a committee and told them that, so, if you had a consent agenda, this would be on it. So that's a good way to get that through.
Yeah, strongly recommended.
It worked that time.
Yeah. The next item on state consent agenda, I suppose, would be the Tennessee THEC Master Plan. And this is a new methodology for us, some new terms, a master plan update and refinement. And the background here, and this morning we heard from Dr. Oldham, the president there, as well as the architect, Mr. Gary Askew, about this master plan. The most recent plan was adopted in 2010. And in lieu of going through another full-blown review and essentially starting over with a new master plan, Dr. Oldham and his staff directed the architects to begin to make adjustments to what they had currently, to tweak some aspects of that plan to bring it forward, refining the existing plan. It still has new land acquisitions and some new projects envisioned that do require commission action, and therefore staff do recommend it to you for approval and transmission to the Building Commission.
Any additional questions?
Dr. Deaton, I don't think I've ever seen a master plan update refinement before. Tell me what refinement is. Have we used that before?
We have not. It is new as far as I know. And again, I think it is trying to distinguish what would be a new and distinct master plan starting over from a typical master plan. Again, taking the previous one and refining it on a shorter cycle than we would typically see. Usually these take every 5 or 6 years or so. This one was only 3 years ago. And they wanted to distinguish, again, a new full-blown master plan, knowing that they're working off of the existing one, refining aspects of that. I think that's why they chose that language to send to us.
So in the past, anytime any institution wanted to make any type of, what I've used the word adjustment, to their master plan, they had to go through the full-blown master plan process again?
Usually they would start over because it had been so much time elapsed since the last master plan that they really needed to, because this one, Dr. Oldham wanted to maintain many of the key aspects of the 2010 plan and not really start over. Again, just tweaking that aspect and going from there.
So do you feel like this opens the door a lot more for institutions to start doing more refinements and maybe not going through that process anymore?
Well, let me stress that the process, they still follow the same process they typically would. It was extensively reviewed at the campus level, developed by the architects with input from every constituency through the board, here to THEC for action, onto the building commission. The process is still intact. The difference here is the pace of the cycle, again, 3 years later. And I think that's what warrants the tag refinement, and I think that'd be appropriate for our consideration.
So what's the outer edge? So is it 3 years, 4 years? I mean, at what point do you have to go through that process again?
I'd say a couple of things. First is some minimal number of years. 3 is probably the low end of that range, probably more like 4 or 5. But typically, too, it's the circumstances surrounding it. In this case, you had a new president come in 2 years after the old master plan, who again was familiar with it, wanted to keep some aspects of it but make some changes. Because that fit in within that 3 to 4 year window, this is sort of an exception that proves the general rule. But those two features, I would say, would dictate how we approach these in the future.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Ross? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We're moving in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Approved. Next is the reappointment of the audit committee member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Dr. Rhoda. I'm happy today to present for your consideration the reappointment of one of our audit committee members. Sharon Hayes was appointed to the audit committee in January of 2011 and has served a 3-year term. The charter allocates a 3-year term and can be reappointed for another 3-year term. Currently, the committee consists of 5 members, 2 from THEC and 3 from TSAC. And it is Dr. Rhoda's recommendation and staff recommendation to reappoint Ms. Hayes to the audit committee.
In addition to persons, do we know this person? Oh, that's you. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. We're moving approved. You will be paid commensurate with your responsibilities.
I appreciate it.
You're most
It's an
welcome.
honor, sir.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Next, we have several informational items, and our first will be Colleges of Memphis approach to Drive for 55. We will call on Mayor A.C. Warden to do a brief presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
It will be brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Dr. Doug Scarborough is actually going to lead us through this quickly. There is a video. I'm basically doing the color commentary. I will begin, Randy. This is our way of showing that we're going to be intentional in doing our part on Drive to 55. And certainly places like Memphis have so much to gain. We can get you a long way there with the potential growth that we have there. The key as to what we're doing differently, and this is why we have been funded a couple of times by the Lumina Foundation. Most mayors, other than saying that their K through 12 systems are funded, and we don't do that in Memphis, it's now county responsibility, are basically glad to say, hey, I am out of the school business. But whatever you're doing in a city, if you're a mayor, you're going to do education. If your city's going to be at all successful. Anytime you say, I'm out of the education business, your city's going down the tubes. Simply because when it comes to industrial and business recruiting, you can get people to come to your town for low taxes, but that benefit soon wears out. But you need a qualified workforce. You never say, well, I'll get to this point and I'll be able to use incompetence or whatever. I mean, you're always going to need that workforce. Tax incentives, all these other things that you use to recruit have an expiration date on them, but the need for good, skilled talent has no expiration date on it. And this is why mayor is in a critical position to work with those who are seeking to come to your town. We saw that early on in Memphis. First thing I did was appoint Dr. Scarborough. He has a PhD. Sometimes when I call folks and I say, I'm going to send you over to Dr. Scarborough, they get, I say, no, he's a PhD. I didn't think, I get a lot of complaints in my office. And when folks, I tell them I'm going to send them to a doctor, they think I'm diagnose them as being crazy or something. A lot of them are. But he is a PhD doctor. First thing I did was to appoint him as head of my Office of Human Talent and Capital. And the folks kind of laughed at that at first, but I saw the greatest need in Memphis was to really show that we're serious about getting folks educated, getting job skills. That's all he does. So it makes it very convenient for me if it's an employer who's coming in, I need this, can you do this? I've got someone to say, we don't have it now, but I'll go to this college, and by the time you open up here, we'll have that talent for you here. Likewise, folks, talent wanting to come to Memphis. Doug is the person to do that. The other thing we did is to pull together all of the colleges and universities in Memphis. We're very intentional about this, have our own website organization called the Colleges of Memphis. And by the way, our logo is knowledge, wisdom, and soul. Pick up on that.
That's good.
We couldn't get barbecue in there, but we don't know where that fits. But we meet regularly. They know what talent needs that I'm coming in contact with. I know who can do what, and we'll have one very concrete example in working with Dr. Essex that we were able to get a workforce together in very, very short order. Up until that point, we really had no relationship with our colleges and universities. I know what every college and university in my town is doing, can do, know what their need, and it's just an excellent organization to be able to get all your college and university presidents and the Technical Institute in one room with one phone call, and they're all there. It's working quite well with us. So taking that and looking at the need in Memphis, and keep in mind, when it comes to the educational levels, it's far below what we desire. We admit that. We know that. And this is why we're so intentional in doing something about it. With that, Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you and pick up where if you want to start with the first video.
We start the video and that gives the...
Let me just mention one thing. One of our first grants was with the Latino Student Success, and this came from the Lumina Foundation. We have a very large Latino population. As a matter of fact, we have one elementary school, or the middle school, has 67%. What is Treadway? What's that school? Kingsbury?
Kingsbury.
Kingsbury has about 67% Latino enrollment. So we know what challenges we have, and this is why we went after this grant. Doug, why don't you take it from there?
From rural and urban, coastal and inland cities, mayors gathered with one goal in mind: educate their workforce, especially their Latino youth. Memphis hosted this national mayoral conference to explore challenges and share strategies in connecting education with economic development.
There is no excuse. There's no such thing as my city's too big, my city's too small to do any of that. The population of America is changing. There is no hiding place from that tidal wave of change. No excuses.
And no avoiding the critical problem of an equity gap and a degree gap among Latinos, the nation's fastest growing demographic. 21% have a post-secondary degree. That's compared to 30% for African Americans and 44% for white working-age Americans. That's why Lumina Foundation's president and CEO, Jamie Marisotis, says cities must take the lead.
I think mayors get it. They have to play in the sandbox of education. They understand that they have the power of the bully pulpit.
The frustration for the mayor of Del Rio, Texas, is only 18% of his student population has a 2- or 4-year degree.
You can only flip so many hamburgers. So we're not doing a justice to our children by not providing the resources for them.
He told fellow mayors college access and affordability are stumbling blocks for his largely Latino community.
And right now, we're just dragging along, going along with status quo, and that's not good enough.
In our area, the businesses are ready to go. Everybody's ready to go. The thing is how do we get that information out to the Latino population?
Informing Latino families, helping them understand the college application and financial aid process is one piece of the puzzle a 4-year-old grassroots organization is tackling head-on. It's called Tennessee Achieves, and it targets low-income, first-generation high school students.
This year we had a 90% FAFSA filing rate amongst 6,500 students, which was really incredible.
Their mentoring and scholarships also result in an 87% fall to spring college retention rate.
You can nail that to the wall. That's hope.
I have no problem about borrowing ideas from other municipalities.
That is the objective, a cross-pollination of ideas, an ongoing national conversation among mayors whose communities received Lumina's Latino Student Success Grants. One important lesson that Memphis has learned.
Quit finding reasons why you cannot as a city and find all the reasons where you must do.
We have 2 videos. Obviously, in the first video, you can see engagement of mayors. And you can see 2 distinguished gray-haired gentlemen that were able to join us for the convenience. But also, I know Dr. Raines is here, and she joined us for that convenience as well. The next video talks specifically about how Lumina has kind of doubled down on their investment in Memphis and what they're doing across the nation, specifically in cities. And I'll talk about how we're going to go about getting that done and linking it with the Drive 55.
Doug, you're going to mention the second grant, the one we just received, right?
It's coming up.
Wherever the most talented people choose to migrate is where the next economic empires will rise. Today's cities are recognizing that to be competitive, they'll need to build up some serious brain power. They have to enable a growing number of educated workers, people with skills that are aligned with coming labor market needs. To do that, they need collaboration with local employers, governments, community organizations, schools, and universities. When all of that happens, communities gain not just a competitive edge, they also experience improved stability, health, and vitality. Why? Because higher education attainment is linked to just about every positive outcome that American communities are working to achieve. There's a new finish line, and a high school diploma is not enough to get there. The simple fact is that education is our key investment strategy for the 21st century. Human capital, far more than physical infrastructure, explains which cities succeed. So, as a community, where do you start? You set a goal. At Lumina, our goal is to increase the proportion of Americans with high-quality degrees and credentials to 60% by the year 2025. Next, communities build collaborations around their goals and drive the public will for change. And communities leverage that will and focus their priorities to get meaningful results. Increased high school graduation and college entry. Improvement in post-secondary completions. An increase in adult learners returning to school. Elimination of equity gaps. Increased certifications and workforce credentials. Increased post-secondary attainment. And when that will to change takes hold, entire communities will shift approaches, align resources, find connection points, and work together to move the needle and make where they live more competitive. To get there, Lumina is working to support communities committed to increasing attainment in higher education. The first set of cities has just been announced, and there are many more to come. And our national partners will work with these communities and many others over the next 3 years to strengthen collaborations, align efforts, and build action plans to meet our goals. Partner cities will receive technical assistance, targeted funding, planning tools and data for decision-making, networking and professional development opportunities. We know that higher education counts for individuals, cities, and the nation. Let's get to work.
So we're part of the collaboration. There's actually going to be 3 different cohorts. We're in the first cohort, and they said the first cohort is the most lucrative one. The way we're going to go about getting it done is Mayor Wharton talked about just a moment ago, the Colleges of Memphis, this collaboration that we have of area colleges and universities, and we're working with them, and then we're going to work with other partners that you'll see here in just a moment about setting the goal for Memphis that links in with the Drive to 55 goal. As you see here, what we want to do is not only link in with Drive to 55 and Lumina Foundation's goal 2025, but then also with the Obama administration's goal of 2020 for post-secondary education. So what we did is that we pulled together local partners. We already do work with all of these organizations on different initiatives, a lot of them on the Latino Student Success Initiative that you saw a little bit earlier. The Colleges of Memphis is the organization that we talked about just earlier. Latino Memphis, they're actually at the head of our Latino Student Success Initiative, and THEC has taken the lead and helping us be able to get that grant. Memphis Talent Dividend is an organization that works specifically on increasing that post-secondary number. People First is a cradle-to-career collaborative that we have in the city of Memphis that's very similar. We also have the Seeding Success, which is part of the National Strive Network that works on collaborative impact and making sure that you have a cradle-to-career success. And obviously, you know, Tennessee Higher Education Commission. The Community Partnership for Attainment Metropolitan Partners, so they listed there. These are all partners that will help us with technical assistance. For each city, the technical assistance will look a little different. We actually have consultants that are working with us now. This was just announced in December, so we're working now on completing the charter, and then after we complete the charter, we'll look at what specific technical assistance that we will need. Some that was provided to all of the cities that attended the convening that was in Indianapolis in December was information from the Brookings Institute. We do a lot of work, Memphis. We already have a business plan with the Brookings Institute, but this is specifically around education. There are handouts over there that have a full deck of information about the city. It's a basic demographic, it's labor supply information, it's labor demand information, and also the quality of local institutions. I pulled out 3 slides to highlight just a couple points. One, on this one, you'll see not only the area population, but if you look and you compare our area with the United States, you'll see that we're about 19 percentage points over the American population when you look at our population under 18. So we have, obviously, as we start talking about education, particularly post-secondary education, we have a huge advantage that we have a large amount of our population that will be coming through both K-12 and higher education in coming years, and we can be able to change our transition, change our trajectory based upon that. This shows our attainment rate. So right now we have an attainment rate that includes associate's degree, so associate's degree and higher, of 32%. So we do have a good amount of work that we need to do in order to reach that 55%. And we know it's Drive to 55 for the state of Tennessee. One of the things that we looked at and realized very early on, and in conversations with Randy, is that it's going to take all of Tennessee to get there, but specifically Memphis is going to have a heavy lift. So it might be, when we create that number, it might actually be over that 55% that you're looking at for Memphis, since we do have a larger percentage of the population there. Last is want to point out here is that we have a number of students that are from out of state that are included in this number, but then also as you look at the total Metro post-secondary students graduating in 2012, that's a large percentage of our population. That's almost 5% of the population that you look at that just graduated last year. So we have a good trajectory for change, but also the ability to be able to change relatively quickly. With that, any questions?
Question for Dr. Scarborough, Mayor Warden?
No.
Anything you'd like to?
No, it is that it really takes, there's no such thing as a mayor or county exec or whatever saying that I'm going to delegate this off to the Board of Education or that. When you're working with folks, you're trying to recruit to your city, they know the difference between somebody who has dirt under his or her fingernails and can deliver. And the reason that's critical is it's the mayor or the county exec or governor, whomever, who is at the table talking about the incentives. And we are now expanding what's on the table. If they're willing to partner up with us in educating or training a particularly difficult population, and you're talking about payments in lieu of taxes, it might mean the difference between a 12-year incentive and a 13-year incentive or 15-year incentive. All of that goes into the mix. So it's only those elected officials who are actually in the mix, and that empowers those in higher education. When you get there, we have just really neglected our colleges and universities around this state. We have huge celebrations when we bring some plant to town, and that's fine. But do you know that every fall on the campuses of our various colleges and universities, we bring more talent to the city? I mean, high-end talent. And I bet you've never seen a city that has a banner saying, faculty, welcome back. We do nothing. And consequently, they come, they stay in our towns and cities for 3 or 4 years. They teach on campus there, and then they leave. So this is an effort to get our college presidents and officials to say, look, there's a chore right here where you can get involved, and it percolates down to the students, and the students start getting involved. So this is just our effort to really become intentional about developing talent, attracting talent, keeping talent, particularly focusing on those who have been neglected in the past. So it's a very intentional thing would be the word that I would use.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Any questions for the mayor?
I'd like to add
Brandon,
a couple
please.
quick things just to underscore what Douglas said. As we look at the math to get to 55%, it's impossible to get there without Memphis. Memphis has got to lead the way. So it's critical for you to be successful if our state's going to be successful. So that was one thing. And then I sent a text to Chrissy Delahondo, who was in the video, that's the executive director of Tennessee Achieves, about 30 minutes ago, in a panic, saying, I'm sitting by Mayor Wharton. I need some stats. So she was I can sound smart about, we confess, I'm not. And here's some new totals on Tennessee Achieves. This year, we have 840 young people in community colleges and technical colleges in Memphis, all going with a mentor, all free of charge. And then this year, we had a 44% increase in applications. 4,499 kids applied to go for next year's school. So it's an incredible dent. Great news for Shelby County. Sadly, there's not another county in West Tennessee west of Davidson County outside of Lake County. So we've got some gaps to fill, like Haywood County. But it's great news for Shelby County.
And the thing about it, it's doable. That's right after, before Governor Haslam was sworn in, he came down, I guess it was the weekend after the election, and he asked our county mayor, and I said, what's one of your top issues here? And we told him, I had initiated a much smaller program as county mayor, and I said, we'd like to take this thing countywide and statewide. And he said, how can I do that? Let me show you. I said, Governor, if you would have a stand-up breakfast so we could raise a little money to show that folks will come out, and Memphis is supposed to be a poor place. He came down, Randy, and then one morning at a stand-up breakfast, as I call it, nothing elaborate, to get the seed money going in Memphis, Tennessee. Not a lot of promotion and all, but raised about $500,000. So it can be done. And that's why I said in the video there's no excuse anywhere. If you show the correlation between your industrial, your business success, and what's coming out of your colleges, your technical institutes, the folks are going to get on board. So, Randy, whatever I can do to get it outside Shelby County, I'll be more than glad to do it.
Is yours privately funded?
Yes.
It's all private?
Yes. Yes.
All
right
private
now,
funds.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, all private funds, and then also, in addition to a lot of the foundations and corporations, in addition to providing funds, they also provide mentors as well.
You can't place a dollar value on the mentors. You have many individuals who have failed before, or an older brother, an older sister tried to go to college, failed, got crushed. You don't know how intimidating it is to start over again. We take for granted writing a personal statement. Most of us have had lives in which we're glad to write them. personal statement. But when you look at the history of many of these individuals, I was helping a young man write a personal statement, and it got to some very personal things about where his mother was. And he would get that far, and he would just stop every time. So that mentoring process is absolutely essential. That's just as valuable as the dollars themselves.
I think it's just one of the really exciting things that's happening right now. That there are so many of these very personal kinds of initiatives, very one-on-one kind of initiatives that we're seeing just kind of scaled up all across the state. I mean, we too were lucky enough to win a Lumina grant just before Christmas that puts us as part of a conversation of several states to put these kinds of ideas in place. But really all the ideas are all about really getting individual with students and finding ways which we can help them succeed one by one. It's really exciting.
Mr. Chairman, one last one. I know you said brief. Doug, who?
Yeah, I passed that a while back.
Who's doing Graduate Memphis? Tell them about Graduate Memphis.
The Graduate Memphis is effort done by Leadership Memphis, funded by the Plow Foundation. So in addition to a number of initiatives we have, they funded it to the tune of about $1.7 million. It is actually housed, a great partnership, housed at the Benjamin Hooks Library, which is the main library for the city of Memphis. It's a resource center where all of the participating institutions send in individuals, and they work with people on primarily adults that are returnees that are coming back to college, because we have somewhere upwards of about 200,000 individuals in Memphis that have some college and no degree.
That's that tough population. So we've broken out a piece that focuses just very intensely on those who got started, marriage, family, illness, whatever. You're talking about a tough effort. It really takes a lot to get them back. But as you said, we're not, someone said this morning, we'll never get to that 55 on freshly minute college grad. We have got to be just as intense on getting these who are out there with some post-secondary, but not any kind of degree. And that's what we're doing.
Dr. Scarborough, Mayor Warden, thank you. Excellent job. We're not going to invite you back anytime soon, but you guys did an excellent job. Next, we will go to our legislative update. Mr. Slaw.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rhoda, members, good afternoon. As you may have seen and heard, the year 2 of the 108th General Assembly commenced on January 14th. We have been advised by the Speaker's offices to expect an efficient and speedy session, much like last year. So it's very likely at our April 24th meeting, I'll be able to give you a summary of all the legislation that has passed, and they may have gavelled out by then. So I'd like to just get started. This is just a summary of some of the bills that have been filed this year. Let me disclaim, we are actually at the point now where the final bill filing deadline is February 5th. Everything should be in at that point. So this is the state of these bills as they are today. And anyone familiar, and we have a former House Majority Leader with us on the commission, these are all subject to change, but this is what we know today. Senate Bill 1834 and House Bill 2116 reflects a potential change in the state employee fee waiver program. The committee's charged THEC, UT, and TBR staff in the off-season to take a look at these and see if there were any potential efficiencies. We met several times over the summer and into the fall and found, upon an analysis of the data, one little troubling aspect to the statute. This actually goes back to 1990. When that was passed at that time, granting state employees this one course per term benefit, there was no hour limit in the statute, which in 1990 may have been fine. Probably, and I was in college at that time, a class meant 3-4 hours maybe. That doesn't reflect the state of the offerings today. And we've got instances, and I wouldn't call it an abuse at this point, but we can't deny an employee who wants to take a 12, 15, 19-hour class using this benefit. We reported our recommendations and findings back to the chairman of each House and Senate Education. They agreed and felt we needed to better define this little ambiguity in the statute, and that's what this bill would do. It would set a limit of 4 hours for the benefit, or 120 clock hours at a TCAT, so as not to hurt any students that might want to take a longer class. They can apply the cost equivalent of that 4 hours, the monetary credit they get from the benefit, towards a 6, 8, 10, 12-hour class. So they're not losing anything, but we do feel we're catching this at a time when the numbers and costs incurred will increase as time goes on. Senate Bill 2249 also reflects some work in the off-season by staff from THEC, Labor, Department of Education, TSAC, and the Comptroller's Office. As many of you may know, that GED has changed their scoring rubric, and Public Chapter 787 from 2012 directed these stakeholders to take a look at what we had and recommend a new score. And we submitted 2 recommendations to the legislature. They chose a score of 170, which reflects college and career readiness. And that's what this bill we do. And it's the fact that there's not a House sponsor listed on this, that is no reflection on the bill and what this seeks to do. That House companion bill probably has not been filed yet, and I checked this morning. So we don't know who our House sponsor is, but it will be coming out. Senate Bill 2362, House Bill 2246 by Senator Gresham and Representative Fogarty revisits the Complete College Act. 4 years in, we've learned a little bit more about this, and some of the language as drafted, the terms every and all were employed in that statute quite a bit. This does really 3 things. We're recognizing that some majors don't fit into a transfer pathway route. For example, architecture and nuclear engineering don't necessarily transfer well from the community college to a 4-year institution. That's one change. And I think all 3 changes are about practicality. The second change has to go articulation and transfer agreements. The 2010 Complete College Act, all institutions shall. This gives us a little bit of room with geographic feasibility. And the third change has to do with dual admission agreements, and also plugging in programmatic or geographic considerations in executing that duty. Senate Bill 1452, House Bill 1451 is tied to tuition discounts and would extend the current 25% discount that is offered to the children of state employees, retired state employees, school teachers, and retired school teachers to any LEA employee. Senate Bill 1554, House Bill 1606. This is the SREB Compact Sunset Extension Bill. We actually appeared, Dr. Rhoda and Dave Spence from SREB appeared before the Joint Committee, General Welfare Committee, on October 23rd. They recommended actually more than what was originally drafted in the bill, a full 6-year extension on this. This touches THEC and contract education programs, academic common market, and several others. Senate Bill 1575 and House Bill 1591 is the THEC sunset extension. We're scheduled to appear along with UT, TBR, TSAC on February the 10th before the Joint Government Operations Committee, and at that point we will present our cases to them and see what we get. Senate Bill 975, House Bill 1089, sponsored by Senator Randy McNally and Chairman Brooks in the House. This does touch THEC a little bit as far as the capital projects, but it defines, requires any state legislative request, and that is language definition from the bill for higher education projects be first considered and acted upon through the established processes and procedures that exist today. It also, the bill is actually through the committee process on the Senate side, and was heard this week in House Education Sub. I believe will be scheduled in full House Education next week. Senate Bill 1683, House Bill 2179 by Chairman Gresham and Representative Rich would establish a tuition freeze program at all the public 2-year and 4-year institutions. Basically, coming in as freshmen, it would maintain that rate at the time of enrollment throughout their college career. Senate Bill 1905, House Bill 1876 is a slight modification to the Tennessee Step-Up program. I briefed you on this last April, Step-Up program, and Betty Dandridge Johnson is actually, I think, on their board. Chairman Senator Overby and Representative Ramsey also carried this bill last year, establishing for students with intellectual disabilities the program it is a certificate program at Lipscomb, Vanderbilt, UT, and the University of Memphis. What they found after the bill was enacted was that being a 2-year program, they had some students who were in year 2 that because of how the bill was drafted did not get to take advantage, they're enrolled, but did not get to take advantage of the funds that were available, and that would remedy that issue. That's my summary, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Sloan? Yes.
Scott, I didn't get the bill number for Representative Pitts and Senator Green's bill, but my question is, has the fiscal note been included on that yet? Do we know what the cost is going to be to the institutions who have to eat the cost of tuition discounts?
Fiscal note on this bill is about $6 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions?
Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the tuition freeze? I wanted to get the bill number. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. That's it.
Thank you.
And are there fiscal projections on this too as well?
I don't have the note with me, but I can get that to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott? Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Next, we will have academic program review. Mr. Krause.
Sir.
Well, thank you, Chairman, Dr. Rhoda, members of the Commission. We've talked a lot today about the Drive to 55. We've talked a lot about our state's goals to increase higher education credentials. And just to kind of take that out of the abstract for the next few minutes, what we're really talking about when we talk about our state reaching these goals are students having a meaningful certificate, bachelor's degree, master's degree, or doctorate that helps them succeed in the workplace. And we think for that reason, the health of those programs is paramount. And so what we'll do over the next few minutes is we will really kick the tires on our state's academic programs and their health. When we say health, what we mean at THEC generally is two things. Productivity, that is the program meeting the projections that they laid out when they proposed to THEC and we approved it? And second, fiscal health. Productivity is important because two reasons. One, we know that students in a cohort do better than students who are walking along in a 1 or 2 student set within a major. And also, programs survive based on the tuition revenue they derive from their enrollment. And so I'm going to ask Herbert Brown to come up. Herbert is our academic affairs analyst. He has been buried in the data of our new programs for the last 6 months, really. And what he's going to do is walk you through every new program that's been established within the last 5 years. What is that program's health? Are they meeting their projections? And after that, briefly, we'll talk a little bit about how many new programs have been created in the past 12 months, what the quality of our programs looks like, and then finally, what's the timeline and glide slope over the next year for THEC to work with UT and TBR to assess our programs moving forward. So with that, I'm going to call Herbert up.
Chairman Johnson, Dr. Rhoda, and members of the Commission. Newly approved programs are evaluated under the post-approval monitoring cycle. Institutions establish benchmarks which basically include projected enrollment numbers, projected graduate numbers, and program costs. These benchmarks are established by the institutions, not by THEC or any other governing body. Failure to meet these benchmarks can impact an institution substantially. For example, if the institution fails to enroll the projected number of students, then there may be a deficit in tuition receipts which in turn causes a financial burden to the institution. The monitoring cycle, as you can see, spans for 5 years for doctoral, master's, and bachelor degree programs, and 3 years for associate and certificate program. Basically, we affectionately call the post-approval monitoring process PAM in our office. So PAM basically focuses on program quality and improvement, and basically the ultimate goal is to help establish healthy academic programs for our students in the state. There were 61 programs reviewed this year. Please note that there were 3 programs that were delayed. Of the 61, 21 or 34% of the programs met their benchmarks, so they met both the graduate and enrollment projections. So for example, the Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Science at MTSU, they proposed to enroll 159 students. They actually enrolled 445 students. They proposed to have 56 graduates, but they actually had 76, so hats off to them. The 34% is a slight decrease. Last year there were 35% of academic programs that met both their benchmarks. 40 of the 61% or 66% failed to meet their benchmarks. There are numerous reasons why a program may not meet their benchmarks, issues that are not within the control of the institution, difficulty in hiring faculty, or changes in the labor market. There were 5 programs that were underperforming this year and are coming off of the 5-year monitoring cycle. On average, these programs were low producing. And again, there could be numerous reasons why this is. Last year, there were 3 programs in this situation. The 3 programs, as you can see, went through the monitoring cycle for an additional year. Also, they did what we call a program productivity plan. So the program productivity plan addressed deficiencies within the program and also gave a summary of corrective actions that the program could take to basically reach the established benchmarks. And even though these programs were on an additional year of monitoring, they had graduates, which in turn ultimately helps us reach our Drive to 55 goal. Are there any questions or
Questions from the group?
I'll turn it back over to Mike.
So Herbert gave you the lay of the land of kind of what our programs have looked like over the last 5 years. I want to talk to you just about this year briefly and kind of what occurred in the last 12 months. The big takeaway here, we had 37 new programs. It's really not accurate to say that there was great program growth at all levels. These really were sub-baccalaureate credentials. These were associate degrees and really largely short-term certificates. We highlight short-term certificates because those are our most nimble credentials. Those are when a local employer goes to a community college and says, I need people that can do this right now. That typically translates into a short-term certificate. So again, pretty low program action at the university level, very high program action at the community college level. We've also had pretty low terminations this year, and we don't use that. There's not a number that we hope to hit each year. It's just something that we monitor. Terminations have dropped off as opposed to previous years, and as a result, our total inventory has grown yet again. We've had several years of consecutive growth in programs. Just want to walk you through that really quickly. In 2012, we had 48 new programs. The year before that, we had 92 new programs. So this will be our 3rd consecutive year of exponential growth each year. Any questions on this? This is the section I really want to give the institutions and the systems a large amount of credit. This is something that in Tennessee we're kind of used to talking about, and it feels commonplace. This is not commonplace, what I'm about to talk to you about. In Tennessee, with the outcomes-based funding formula, one of the things that we have to buttress that is a quality measure to ensure that as we seek to produce more credentials, we're also monitoring the quality of the credential. Very few states do this, and I would wager that no state does it as comprehensively as we do. We require every single academic program in this state to either be accredited by their disciplinary accreditor or be seeking accreditation. And if they are not, they receive a deduction of performance funding points and thus translates to a loss of dollars. And in our state right now, we have 99% of our programs that should be accredited by a disciplinary accreditor. They have achieved that accreditation. That is a gold standard of quality. It matters. It's a big deal. And the hat really goes off to our faculty members on our campuses who endure travails when they try to go through this accreditation process and do it really well. So I just want to talk briefly now about the year ahead. This week, Dr. Rhoda issued an official notice to both systems that after, under the leadership of Betty Dancher-Johnson, our Chief Academic Officer, working with Dr. Katie High at UT, Dr. Denley at the Board of Regents, to request a formal moratorium on new programs that will begin July 1st. That gives us the space to do a couple things. First, there's been a request from the boards to kind of relook some of the processes in place. For instance, specializations, concentrations. Do we need to maybe approach those in a different fashion? This gives us that time to do that. In addition, at THEC, we need to take a look at our academic policies in response to a recent audit and formalize some changes. Second, we hope that it gives institutions the space to look at their data. We're about to provide every institution with a top-to-bottom evaluation of the productivity of their programs. We hope that this gives them the time to sit with that data. In light of the outcomes-based funding formula, no institution is going to be more motivated to take a look at their catalog than those campuses, and we hope that we're giving them the data to make decisions. Questions on this? Dr. Denley, thoughts? You worked with us to kind of through this process. Your thoughts on what you hope to accomplish during this period?
Yeah, actually, to some degree, what I'm excited about is the mirror image of the low producing programs. We concentrated a lot on the programs which, actually I want to make a really clear demarcation between quality and productivity. There's no I don't believe any inference that any of these programs that don't produce that many graduates are in any way academically unrigorous or weak. They go through a very rigorous kind of approval process to go in place in the first place. What we're talking about is finding ways in which they can be vibrant and produce many more graduates. So there's that piece for programs that are small. What I'm really intrigued is to look at the vast bulk of the programs that we have that are generated and make sure that the qualifications that the students get have as much credibility and marketability in the workplace as they can. A lot of the names of the degrees and the specifics of the degrees are a product of history. So we have programs that they're called a concentration in this, or maybe the letters that go after the name. They made sense when those programs were approved. What I'd really like to do is to retool those so that when the student graduates and get that certificate, when they go in front of an employer, that what it says on their certificate is exactly what the employer expects it to say. And those things have changed over time. And so, and I know you're responsive to this too. So I think that there are ways in which we can really optimize the vast bulk of what we do and get ourselves in line to make sure that the qualifications we're having have the most utility they can. I think that's pretty exciting.
It is. Other questions?
That's on academic programs, not technical programs, correct?
A technical program that awards a certificate or diploma would be included.
So certificates as well as...
Oh, yes, sir. It is. Thank you for your time.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
I would just back up the comments about this providing an opportunity to look at lots and lots of programs and to look at how they're organized and what their names are. And I know we talked about this in our discussions. We really would like to be able to make sure that the institutions can kind of do that first, and that they can look to see where upgrades need to happen, where combinations need to happen. And one of the stumbling blocks right now is that when you do change a degree enough to make it contemporary sometimes, it takes a long time to go through the process. So we're really excited about looking at those processes and trying to increase that efficiency there. And then, as Tristan mentioned, we also have to be really sensitive at the graduate level to numbers, especially in PhD programs. And there may be one or two graduates of a PhD program that is very, very specific, very, very unique, and very, very important. So we just need to make sure we're not looking just at numbers.
Yeah, I echo that too. I mean, it's one of the subtleties of the current procedure that to move something like a concentration really requires almost an equivalent amount of work as creating an entirely new program. And that's just the way that things have been. So.
Let me thank both of you for your comments, and Mike, thank you. Next, we will have Mr. Grant.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rhoda, members of the Commission. I know that I stand between you and Ann's Audit Committee presentation, so I will be brief. So a couple of just items, and this, kind of a good overview. And this is, I'm going to focus in on our Gear Up grant during this time. And I think that it's important to understand when looking at the materials we'll talk about today, our approach to college access. We firmly believe that in order for students to successfully transition into higher education and succeed once they get there, that they must be academically prepared to go there and succeed, and also socially ready to get there. The academic piece, while maybe not an easy thing to address, you can identify those issues through assessments and those types of things. It's really that social piece that is sometimes a little bit more difficult to define. Two of the items that we're going to talk about today really do zone in on the social readiness of our Gear Up cohort and their relationship to transitioning to higher education. The first of those is a market research study that we did with a marketing firm, Walker & Associates. We wrote this into our proposal that we would go through this process of developing a college access and success media campaign that will drive through the rest of the Gear Up grant. So we partnered with Walker & Associates. They conducted interviews at 3 schools. We had one urban, one rural, and one suburban school. We interviewed high school students, their families, their educators, and their counselors about what they perceived to be the motivations of going to college, the barriers that they felt about college, what the perceptions of college were. So to kind of get into some of our findings, a couple of the barriers that we found, these are not going to be barriers that will surprise you. They will affirm your assumptions. But students perceived a financial barrier. They knew that financial aid was available. They didn't know how to obtain it. And this is a theme that we'll see throughout our findings, is that there was a point B, they were at point A, and they just didn't know how to get there. They didn't know how to get from point A to point B. Attitudinal students understand the value of college, but they don't see it as a realistic possibility for themselves. So our students, in college access work, we've talked a lot about, and probably the last decade, about almost proving that college is worth it, that there's value in it. And I think that based on our results, the families that we talked to, the students that we talked to, they understood that there was some intrinsic value in going to college. It just seemed mysterious to them how they were going to get there. Again, A to B, they didn't know how they were going to get to that place, which will flow through in some of the other results that we see here in a little bit. Logistics, particularly in our rural communities, transportation was a significant issue. If I'm a low-income student, my car breaks down, how am I going to access that higher ed institution? Also, there's a cultural piece to that. If I have grown up in a community, that's where my parents are, my grandparents are, there's this fear of leaving. What does that mean for me as a student? Motivation. Students understand that college is beneficial and they can make more money, but that doesn't mean much to them. If you're a low-income student, the intrinsic quality of making more money, what that looks like day to day, doesn't necessarily resonate for me in my life. This also I thought was very interesting. Parental involvement. Parents were the if as to whether or not students went to college. They looked to schools, educators, college access professionals to be the how and the process people, the experts on how to get there. So there's a piece of that in terms of how we talk with parents about if I go to college, but how do we equip our educators to know the process to efficiently get them there? And the definition of college, I'll skip to that one. I think that our students, and this was very interesting in terms of high school cultures. We had some high schools where a 4-year degree, that was college. Some of our rural communities, community colleges weren't just an option, they were a preferable option. They were close to home. I could work while I was there. Also interesting is that our students very much viewed 2-year schools and 4-year schools to be two separate, completely separate paths. There was no mention of the pathways kind of concept. And I think it's something that we can learn in terms of how do we infuse really giving a holistic approach to what their options are when we talk about college access and success. The ACT Engage, you've heard us speak about this previously. The ACT Engage is a psycho-social assessment that ACT has put out looking at really 3 broad categories of indicators: motivation, social engagement, and self-regulation. These really do encompass a lot of the research you see coming out regarding grit, about student success. We assessed all 7,000 of our Gear Up cohort students, which was no small feat. This was an additional assessment for them to implement. And here are the trends that we saw. The indicators that kind of fleshed out was that our students in the schools that we serve have family attitudes towards education, commitment to school, academic success index, will students graduate with at least a 2.0 GPA, and then the graduation index, will they complete it all? Those students who are at risk in these areas were overrepresented in our Gear Up schools. I think one of the aspects of this, just to mention, and how we're going to use these 2 items, how we're going to leverage the market research and the ACT Engage. It's not all bad news, it's diagnostic for us. We are now able to take the TCAP scores from the Department of Ed, the Explore scores, marry that with the ACT Engage data that we have in our market research to really get that 360 view of the students that we're serving. I think the next piece of that is how we implement it in our Gear Up sites. And so with the ACT Engage, for instance, we will have a roster and we will know which students have at-risk indicators across all of the factors that are assessed in that assessment. So what that means is instead of just having a parent workshop about financial aid or about the value of higher education for all students, we might advertise it for all students, but we will target specific students to bring into that. When we marry that with the academic interventions, it really gives us this whole holistic view of doing data-driven interventions around college access and success. This is something that we've never been able to do before. So what we plan to do on the state level is to package this so that it drives our campaign going forward. We expect to create some resources for educators on how to use this data in expanding college-going cultures in their school. But I think, and more importantly, as it pertains to Gear Up, we'll be able to package this for each of our Gear Up districts very specifically so that they can look at their students that they're serving. And there's 7,000 of them across the state. And how can they better serve to ensure that those students that we're serving are transitioning successfully to higher education. So that was a brief fly-through because the audit report is very important. So what questions can I answer?
Very quick question. I understand we're limited on time. Are you collecting anything or have any idea of how these rural students would be prepared for online education?
Interesting question. We follow a cohort. And so we have a mixed bag. We have some school districts who are actively engaged with institutions in doing that, and we keep a fair amount of data so that we can see what the success level of those students are. I think as we go forward, longitudinally, we'll be able to collect that kind of data and see the effect of numerous interventions, whether it be online education, college visits. What are the kind of effects of each of these interventions on the student's success?
I'd be interested to go the other way too, to see whether how the students perform on that Engage assessment influences then modalities of pedagogy. So students who are in the maybe at risk in some of those facets, maybe. Yeah.
Well, and I will say too that we're going to be doing this ACT Engage every 2 years. So we're going to follow this longitudinally. So we'll be able to see some growth. Not only the outcomes not being who went to college, but where did we see movement across each of these indicators, and what were the interventions that propelled that movement.
This was the high school population survey, right?
It is.
Is there any kind of parallel survey on this, the dropout barriers?
I mean, so if you saw the graduation index that was indicated on the assessment, ACT leverages that to say this is the likelihood of a student dropping out. I mean,
No, I'm referring to that population who dropped out
who
of
did
college.
drop out? Oh, college.
21 to 30-year-old group. Any kind of parallel study in that group?
So in TBR, we're actually using Angela Duckworth's GRIT survey. So we actually gave that to a large cohort of incoming freshmen. So we have that data. Now we want to follow that data to see whether a low score on that GRIT survey has any kind of influence about retention or progression.
I was looking at perhaps, are there indicators of what the barriers would be for somebody who has dropped out after 2 years coming back into the system?
No, that's also interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that's a different
Very similar.
population group with different issues probably, right?
In terms of
Work, money.
any other questions I can answer? Excellent.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Next we have the audit report. Good, excellent job.
Thank you. I'm happy to report on behalf of the Audit Committee. We did have a meeting this morning, starting at noon with the Audit Committee. We had all of our members present. I'd like to thank our Audit Committee Chair, Claude Presnell, Carrie McGinnis, Greg Turner, and from the Commission, John Kinsey and Sharon Hayes for all participating and being good Audit Committee members. I inundate them with a lot of information throughout the year. So a couple of things I just wanted to mention that we covered today in that meeting. We talked about the status of the THEC 2013 financial compliance audit, and we covered, we reviewed the THEC financial statements that were put into the state's annual report. We covered some highlights there. We also discussed some communications, some different discussions we're having regarding our federal loan program, the FELP program, with the U.S. Department of Education, and we'll continue to keep the Audit Committee updated on that. The main thing I wanted to focus on for this segment is an update on the sunset audit process. Scott Sloan mentioned it earlier about our sunset hearing will be in front of Government Operations Committee on February 10th. That'll be at 10 in the morning. We received our draft sunset reports for THEC and TSAC, and then UT and TBR got theirs as well in December. And our process has been that we have reviewed the draft findings with our audit committee and with staff internally, and we had to respond to those findings. We responded to THEC's by January 8th and TSAC January 10th. The reports have not been released. We're not able to discuss those today in this public forum. We will send those out to the commission and the boards when those are publicly released, and then the day of the sunset hearing, they will be able to send you, I believe, a link to the streaming video so you can watch that. The audit committee, we had a call with the audit committee on January 7th to discuss and keep them involved in what the issues are about and get their feedback on our responses. We've also had a joint call with TBR and UT to discuss some of the common issues amongst the entities. So again, we will keep you updated on that, and I'm sure we'll have more to tell you at our next meeting. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission on the audit report? And thank you. Dr. Rhoda, the last item, the spring quarterly meeting.
Right, next regular meeting of the commission, April 24th, here in this room, and details to follow.
Thank you. Let me thank all of you for your patience today. I think I failed you. I got you out of here at 1 minute late. And I promise that's not going to happen again. We will take a 5-minute break, and then we will reconvene where we will have our joint meeting with the State Board of Education. Thank you. Thank you.
Morning, welcome everybody to the our annual meeting, THEC and the State School Board. This happens. Seems like it happens every year about this time, about Super Bowl time. That we end up getting together for this meeting. So certainly appreciate you being here. The first thing I'd like to do is just go around the table and get everybody to introduce themselves, and then we'll get the board members who aren't at the table to introduce themselves. So we all have a little bit better association with where we are, who we are, and where we come from. So Melvin, if we could start with you.
I'm Melvin Wright, representative 8th District, Jackson, Tennessee.
Jean Ann Rogers, the 6th.
Carolyn Perry, the 2nd District here in Nashville.
Lonnie Roberts, the 4th Congressional District.
I'm Sharon Hayes with the THEC Board, and I represent Congressional District 8.
Teresa Sloyan, and I represent Congressional District 9 on the State Board of Education.
I'm sitting at the round table. I'm not sure that I have a portfolio, but I'm currently the governor's special advisor on higher education for the Drive to 55.
I'm Pam Coben. I'm with THEC, representing Congressional District 5.
A.C. Warden, Memphis, Tennessee, THEC, District 9.
Justin THEC, Comptroller.
Hi, my name is Adam Jarvis, and I am the TBR student representative with THEC.
I'm Keith Wilson, representing District 1 for THEC.
I'm Robert Fisher, and I'm a UT System representative for THEC.
David Lillard, State Treasurer, THEC Board.
I'm Cato Johnson. I'm Chairman of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and I represent District 7.
I'm Fielding Ralston, Chairman of the State Board of Education, and from the 1st Congressional District, Kingsport. And now let's go over here, Gary.
Gary Nixon, Executive Director of the State Board of Education.
I'm Allison Chansey, Cleveland, Tennessee, representing teachers from the State Board.
I'm Katie Mitchell, and I'm a student member of the State Board of Education.
Janet Ayers, State Board of Education, Congressional District 7.
Kevin Huffman, I'm the Commissioner of Education. Rich Rhoda, Executive Director of THEC.
Okay, do we have everybody? Okay, well, again, welcome. Cato, did you have some remarks to start with here?
Very, very brief.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. One, I think it's really great that we've come together. And one of the things that I've noticed about this, those of us who've been around for a long time, the fact that you have the TBR, University of Tennessee system, you have the State Board of Education, leadership of the governor, the leadership of the commissioner. This is the best working relationship I have seen in many, many years. And those of us like Lonnie, who's really old, who's been around a long time, we have not seen that before, and it's a pleasure being with you. Welcome to our humble abode over here at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. And you've had a long day, and you have time tomorrow, and we've had a very long day. So, Mr. Chairman, it is back to you.
Okay. Appreciate those comments and the word of welcome. We'll proceed with the agenda that's been distributed. The first item on the agenda is the Common Core State Standards update, and Jamie is not here. But
I'm not Jamie Woodson. No.
Okay. Let me just say, if you have not seen the update that SCORE provided, I encourage you to get that and take a look at it. I think they've done a fantastic job of providing us some background on how we got to where we are at the present time, you know, what our current status is and the plan for the future. It's just an excellent job. It's an easy read. They've done an excellent job of formatting it. So I want to pass along my compliments to SCORE for that report.
Thank you.
Look forward to your report this time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Ralston. Chairman Johnson, appreciate you having me here today. Really just wanted to spend a little bit of time at the start of this meeting providing you with really kind of an update on the Common Core State Standards. As I know, many of you know, topic of conversation in the state right now. And really wanted to spend a little bit of time getting back to basics. And really kind of answering three questions. And that's really why, what, and where around the Common Core in Tennessee. And obviously be glad to take any questions as we work through this. I know for many of you this will be not new information, but I think it's always good to really start with a 101 again and be reminded of this work and of course the important work that's still ahead. Just real briefly, SCORE, for those of you who don't know, stands for the State Collaborative on Reforming Education. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization started by Senator Frist and led by Jamie Woodson. And really grateful to have many folks in this room who serve and play important roles within our organization. Folks who serve on our steering committee, Dr. Rhoda, Commissioner Huffman, Dr. Nixon, Ms. Sloyan, a number of other folks in the room, and also Ms. Ayers, who serves on our board. So I'm thankful to have have those folks as well. And again, as an organization, we have two big goals. We want Tennessee to be the fastest improving state in the country in education, a goal we have now met in K-12. And two, that every student in Tennessee graduates high school prepared for post-secondary education or for the workforce. And just briefly, we look at a number of different measures of success to know whether we are doing well as a state. And you can see here things from NAEP to our TCAP proficiency as a state to post-secondary enrollment, all important measures that we look at as an organization. So first, I want to really start with a why. And I think this is a really kind of critical and often overlooked part of the conversation about why we have higher academic expectations for students in our state. This past year, the Georgetown Center on Education and the Workforce released some new numbers on the connection between economic development, workforce development, and public education. And so a couple of these numbers I think are pretty critical and I think important to remember. So 55 million new jobs, that's the number of job openings that the economy across the country can expect to see over the next decade. And 65% of those new job openings will require some form of post-secondary education. A number that has really changed over the last few years pretty dramatically. So 72% is the number of jobs requiring a high school education or less in 1973. 2010, that number was 41%. And in 2020, that number is 36, expected to be 36%. So we know that that students today, for students today, post-secondary education is really critical. The challenge that we see in Tennessee is that we have too many students in K-12 who are going on to post-secondary education unprepared. And one indicator that we look at is ACT, where we see 18% of students in Tennessee who, according to the ACT, who are prepared for post-secondary coursework across all 4 ACT benchmarks. And again, the real challenge that we see here is that the discrepancies are in some of the biggest areas of job growth. So as an example, math, we see a pretty big discrepancy between how students perform nationally and how they perform in Tennessee. And to address a lot of these challenges, as you all know, Tennessee is working on a range of different important pieces of work, from school turnaround to effective teaching to accountability, focus on STEM, that are all leading to big gains for kids in the state. And one critical piece of that work is raising academic standards for our students. And then just a sort of a little bit of a background, the state has, as you know, a long history, particularly over the last 7 years, of making a commitment to raising academic expectations for students. So we saw in 2007 the F from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for Truth in Advertising. We saw a lot of students unprepared for post-secondary education when they left high school. And so this information really served as a driver for folks in our state, for leaders, for many of you to work to raise academic expectations and standards for our students. So the first question is why. Now let's turn to kind of the what. And again, get real down to basics about what are the Common Core state standards and what are we actually talking about. So first, as you all know, standards are the knowledge and skills that students are expected to learn in each grade and in each subject. In 2009, Tennessee took a big step. The State Board of Education took a big step to adopt the Tennessee Diploma Project. And then in 2010, adopted Tennessee's Common Core state standards to build on that work to raise expectations for students in our state. The Common Core is specifically a set of standards in math and English language arts in grades K through 12. So again, math and English language arts, grades K through 12, and you can see examples of kind of what those very specific standards are at the bottom of the screen. When we talk about shifts, what has changed in K-12 classrooms in Tennessee with the Common Core state standards? And there are 3 big things that we like to think about in terms of what those shifts are. Higher, real, and relevant. So first, higher. These expectations are, generally speaking, a higher set of standards for students. So we are expecting more of them in across grades and across those two subject areas. And there's been a number of pieces of research done by the Fordham Institute and others that have looked at Tennessee's old standards compared to the new ones and marked the sort of difference in rigor between the previous standards and the Common Core state standards. Number two is real. So these standards really focus on real learning in the classroom as opposed to rote memorization or test-taking skills. So really focusing on both in teaching and learning in the classroom, is the student actually gaining knowledge and then evidencing that knowledge about the subject material. And then finally, the standards are relevant. So we see a real connection between making sure that students are learning the real-world skills they need to be successful in either post-secondary education or in the workforce. So again, things like critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills are sort of a key part of the standard shift. One of the things that SCORE does very regularly is to check in with how things are working in the field. So what are teachers saying? What are educators saying? What are principals saying? What are parents saying about this work? And really are hearing some pretty inspiring things, particularly from educators in the space. And I've included just a couple of comments from a CTE teacher, from a math teacher, from a district supervisor about the change that they are seeing in instruction in the classroom. And it's a pretty marked change in terms of the kinds of teaching and learning that are taking place. And then just really briefly on timeline. So this school year, 2013-14 school year, is the final year of a 3-year phased implementation of the new standards. And the next year, 2014-15 school year, we'll see a new assessment that will replace the TCAP assessment in math and English. That will measure student progress. And again, sometimes we get questions about why do we need a new assessment? What's really the goal of this new assessment? And really, a number of things. But I think better measuring student progress, accurately measuring whether students are gaining real-world skills and knowledge that are evident in these standards, ensuring that the measurement of knowledge is really focused on instead of just test-taking skills in the test. And really engaging students in writing, recall, abstract thinking, the kinds of things that we want students to be able to evidence when they go on to post-secondary. And then really briefly about implementation, there are obviously folks from the department who can speak in much greater detail than I can about this, but the state has done really significant work around implementation, particularly around teacher training. So making sure that educators in Tennessee have the knowledge and the ability to shift to these new standards in the classroom. And as you can see, states worked with core coaches across the state, trained more than 42,000 teachers. There's a lot of work that is going on the implementation side that we think is a pretty critical piece of the work to implement new standards in the state. And then I think finally, and sort of before I close with a couple final thoughts, I wanted to spend just a minute talking about PARCC. And PARCC is the assessment that will replace TCAP in math and English to measure what students are learning with the Common Core state standards. And I think what's unique about PARCC, particularly in Tennessee, is that our state has played such a critical role in designing and writing this assessment. And so I think as much as any state, this is Tennessee's assessment that will roll out later this year. And I maybe turn over to Dr. Rhoda if you want to speak for a little bit about kind of higher ed's engagement specifically in developing this new assessment.
Thank you, David. And yes, very briefly, but just to pick up what you said, this is important to higher education, and we very much appreciated being involved. I think this is going on in other states, but I think perhaps Tennessee, we've been more deeply involved than others. So why are we involved, or why are we concerned and want to be involved? So I'll think about the drive to 55 and a better educated Tennessee and higher educational attainment, and we know that it's a matter of getting that pipeline of students coming out of high school in greater numbers and college and career ready in greater numbers. Second, the question has been, where is higher education on the Common Core? Well, we see the assessment needs to be part of that. And we have had, and I'm going to look to Mike Krause, I think 15, for a starter, higher education faculty in the state involved in developing these assessments, along with an equal, if not greater, number of K-12 faculty. So again, it's been involved. But as David said, so there's a kind of a shift in the design here about how we're looking at remedial and developmental work in higher education, and that's where PARC comes in. You know, currently we do, of course, the students take TCAPs to determine proficiency in their class, and then the ACT to determine placement in remedial coursework, and there's sometimes a disconnect in that between those two tests. So what PARC will do is eliminate that confusion in the structure, and we'll be using the PARC assessment for that determination about the need for remediation. But it will come while the students are still in high school, so there's time to deal with that and before it becomes a matter of doing it in college. So, I mean, I think it really is, and Mike, if there's anything else we need to comment on that, but we do appreciate being engaged in that. And boy, David, do we appreciate the work of SCORE in doing that.
And that's just really kind of briefly to close. So I think sort of what's ahead on this issue specifically. I think a couple of things that we're particularly interested in, and I think Chairman Rolson mentioned the report that SCORE just recently released. We looked at sort of where the areas of work, particularly around higher standards and the Common Core specifically. I think work remains in our state to continue training teachers and making sure they have the right support. Technology, so PARC will be given online, and so making sure that school districts have the necessary technology to provide that assessment, and really that investing in that technology needs to go beyond a one-time purchase, that it's not just about this test, it's about making sure kids actually have access to technology on a daily basis. And then I think the final thing I would close with is higher education's voice in this issue particularly is incredibly powerful. We are making big changes in teaching and learning in the classroom in K through 12. And higher education, folks in higher education weigh in about the importance of this shift and how the skills that students are learning, skills like critical thinking, skills like problem solving, are the skills that are needed in post-secondary education and ultimately that are needed in the workforce. And so I would encourage you, particularly over the next couple of months, to engage in this conversation about the importance of staying the course with the Common Core state standards in Tennessee. It's a critical piece of our state's work. And we have a lot of work left to go. Thank you again for having me here, and glad to answer any questions if folks have questions.
Questions for David? Kevin, you want to, Kevin, there he is. You want to add anything about PARC to the comments that have already been made?
Do you need me to come up there? Or?
Yeah, why don't you?
Just a couple things to add. One is that I think the Tennessee higher ed engagement is probably stronger than the higher ed engagement in any other state that's been part of PARC. And so I go to all of the PARC board meetings. Tennessee is a governing board state. And other states look on us with envy because of the higher education community's engagement in PARC here. And that's due to the great work of THEC and the efforts of Rich and of Mike and others to really stay engaged. And I genuinely believe that as we think about where we want our students to go in the Drive to 55, I think that PARC is going to give us a legitimate window into whether we are on track to having kids show up at universities not requiring remediation, ready to step right in, and it's the next step for us. We're really proud of the progress that we've had in K-12, but we have a long way to go, and I think this is maybe the best example of a partnership between K-12 and higher ed that the best example I've seen since I've been here.
Okay, any questions? Common Core, PARC, anything in that area? Okay, David, appreciate it. Good job. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, Race to the Top program update. Victoria, go to start that. Is that right? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Hi, everyone. We're swapping the order on you. So my name is Megan Curran. I'm the Director of Race to the Top at the Tennessee Department of Education. I'm going to give you just a brief, very high-level overview of what's happening with Race to the Top, and then turn it over to Victoria from THEC, who's going to dig in a little deeper on some of the work we're doing specifically with higher education. So I will keep my remarks fairly short and have time for questions and then turn it over. The most common questions I get about Race to the Top are, how are you spending the funds? What is the impact as a result? And what's going to happen when it's over? So I figured I would focus my presentation to you all on those three areas. So just backing up a step, I think most of you are probably familiar with this already, but Race to the Top was awarded to Tennessee in July of 2010. We received $501 million to be spent over 4 years. So that means we are in the midst of our last year of implementation. The funding was split by law 50-50, so half of it went to the state level, where we are executing a variety of initiatives that we will talk through a little bit, and the other 50% was allocated out through formula to school districts. And again, we'll get into that a little bit more as I move through. So this first slide is to show you a high-level breakdown of how the state is spending the funding that it has been allocated. You can see that the two largest areas of investment are around supporting teachers and leaders across the state in their development and investing in school turnaround, so the lowest performing schools across the state. And I'll give some specific examples on the next slide across all of these priorities that will sort of help bring to life like what that actually means in practice. But within this pie chart here makes up about $250 million. And within that, and within these priority areas, we've granted about $50 million back to school districts through a variety of discretionary grants. So that's on top of the 50% of funding that they received through formula. And then we've granted almost $20 million to THEC, which is what Victoria will talk a little bit more about, to make sure that we're really integrating the work that we're doing with what's happening before teachers get into the classroom. So again, you see here the same 5 bucket areas that were broken out on the next slide. And actually, Victoria, I have printouts in case people can't see. Would you circulate those for me? Thank you. I forgot to do that before I started. Because I know this print up here is kind of small. So you'll see the 5 same priority areas that I talked about on the previous slide. I've listed just a couple examples within each of those, and I'll talk through one. But we're at the state level executing 30 different unique projects within these 5 priority areas. So the first one that you see up there is standards and assessments, which David just talked us through quite a bit. One of our largest initiatives is supporting teachers in the transition to the Common Core standards. And as he said, with the Race to the Top funds, we've been able to train over 42,000 teachers and principals across the state. And that was all provided at no cost to districts. This data-driven instruction is our second priority, and one example of a big project we're working on there is providing teachers with access to data dashboards that they can have in their classroom, on their computer, at no charge to their district, that will allow them to have information about their students at their fingertips that they can use to make real-time decisions about their instruction on a daily basis. And some districts have systems like this, but a lot of districts across the state can't afford it on their own, and so we'll be able to provide that to them. Under Great Teachers and Leaders, teacher and principal evaluation is one of our biggest initiatives through Race to the Top, and with those funds, we've been able to provide, for example, a data system for school districts to be able to log all of their evaluation information. We provided training and certification to every observer in the state. We have provided consultants through our regional offices to help support implementation on the ground. And so all of that, we've used funds to provide for districts. Under school turnaround, one of the examples of the work we're doing is the creation of the Achievement School District, which most of you are probably familiar with, a statewide school district whose goal is to move the schools in the bottom 5% in the state to the top 25% in the state over 5 years. They have 16 schools in their district this year and will be growing to 22 schools next year. And then finally, STEM is our last priority area, and one of the initiatives we're doing there is to create the Tennessee STEM Innovation Network. And what this is a collection of what we call STEM hubs and STEM schools across the state. There are 6 hubs that we've created spanning from Memphis to East Tennessee out of ETSU. And there are 8 STEM schools that have been created. And really the purpose of the hubs is to support the schools in developing innovative STEM practices and to help spread those practices across their region and share access to STEM resources to schools and districts that might not otherwise have it. So those are just a couple examples, again, of, you know, what does this actually mean on the ground in terms of what we're doing. Shifting to the district side of things, so as I said at the beginning, districts received 50% of the funding as well. The intent of that was sort of twofold. One, to allow them to execute some of the initiatives that we're rolling out at the state level and give them resources to do that. And then 2, to really allow them to innovate on their own and come up with some of their own initiatives that they wanted to do during the grant period. So districts are doing a wide variety of activities, and I've tried to bucket them here into some of the most common categories. You might notice that other happens to be the largest at 31%. That is because I asked districts to sort of self-categorize their work. And I think things that didn't neatly fit into one of the other 7 categories just got lumped there. But some examples of the things we see that are classified as other are things like districts doing incentive pay for teachers on their own through their Race to the Top funds, executing after-school programs or remediation programs during the summer, behavior intervention programs, things like that, to give you a feel for what they're doing. And you can see the other categories, not surprisingly, professional development and personnel and technology are some of the other big categories of spending. So I said at the beginning, the second question after, okay, what are we doing with the money is, so what? What is the impact? And so I wanted to take just a second. I think you all have probably seen these before, so I won't spend too long, and David touched on some of it already, but I wanted to look at our statewide results quickly over the last few years. And as you can see, since the American Diploma Project was implemented that David mentioned, and we moved to new assessments in 2010, we've seen a pretty steady increase in achievement results across all subject areas. And as David mentioned, this past fall, according to the National NAEP assessment, Tennessee became officially the fastest improving state in the country from one test to the next. I think I want to be cautious here and make sure that I am clear that these results are absolutely a reflection of incredibly hard work by teachers and students, and not necessarily any particular initiative that we are doing at the state level. However, you know, we do think that some of the changes that we've seen through the work we're doing in Race to the Top have helped contribute to supporting teachers towards these results. For example, through the evaluation system, we know that teachers are talking a lot more about their instruction. And we really believe that things like that have helped support their development and led to some of the results that you're seeing. Okay, I think this is my last point here is what next. So looking ahead beyond Race to the Top. So where we are right now, we have spent about 70% of the funds to date, and based on how our obligations and our plan is mapped out, we feel pretty good about where we are at this point of time. We also have the opportunity, just announced within the last year, to request no-cost extensions from the federal government, and that is not, it does not allow us to request, let's just extend everything we're doing in Race to the Top for one more year and keep doing it, but we can make requests for very specific initiatives that need more time to achieve their goals. And so we're working through a list of what those things might be as we speak, and we'll be proposing those to the federal government. We have already, though, gotten approval to allow districts to request extensions from us to keep doing some of their initiatives for another year. So we'll give them a couple opportunities to do that between now and the end of the grant in July. After the first round of requests from them, we had 25 districts who requested an extension. So far it's been a fairly small number. Finally, in terms of sustainability, Race to the Top, I think, was a real unique sort of one moment in time for us to be able to do a lot of stuff. And we've known from the beginning that it was one time and it was short term. And so we've tried to plan with that in mind from the very beginning. And so both at the state and district level, that means that some of the work we're doing won't continue after the grant period, and really wasn't intended to. It was intended to capitalize on this experience that we've had for the last 4 years. Some of the work will continue, but outside of the department. So we've given grants to a lot of different entities who have been able to start up different initiatives and develop plans to sustain that and keep it moving beyond Race to the Top. And finally, some of the initiatives are really key priorities for the department and for the state. And so we have been working both through a reorganization of our office to really embed those priorities within our day-to-day operations so that it really just becomes part of our business as opposed to a special, separate initiative. And then, two, on capacity building, we have really worked to ensure that our initiatives are building capacity within educators and principals across the state to really give more of a shelf life at a lower cost to the work that we're doing down the road. So I will stop there. And before I turn it over to Victoria, see if anybody has burning questions for me. Yes.
Megan, back in your 5 priority areas, the teacher data dashboards.
Yes.
You said it was information on students that would help them at any moment, maybe enable that student to learn. What information is in the dashboard, and where is that collected?
So it's collected at the district level. It's data that already exists, and when I was teaching, it was data that I would have had to go to the office and pull the blue card from the file in the office and get the information. So my parents' phone number is one example. Or information that I would have had to go to a totally separate site to look up, or a file in our office to look up the students' performance from last year so that I can help make decisions about their performance moving forward and how to instruct them this year. So it's all data that's currently available to them. It's just putting it in one place for them to access easily.
Okay, thank you.
I realize that's an average of growth in these across the entire state, and you've got a vast array of programs there that have been implemented. Have you been able to kind of parse through that and see any correlations between some core programs that growth, success, et cetera, that we could kind of double down on and say, hey, these 3 things seem to be common among really substantial growth areas?
It's really hard to do and to make those direct connections. We're looking as much as we can at data from all of our initiatives to try and get at impact, but finding that one-to-one correlation is really, really difficult. So I don't know that I have a good...
Or maybe there'd be a grouping of these 3 things.
I mean, I think generally what I sort of hit on in terms of how we frame our results is, high expectations, and so we're getting at that through our standards and assessments. Supporting educators, and we're getting at that through all of the professional development we're providing, as well as the evaluation process. And sort of aligning all of your goals and priorities. And we've done that through the work that we've done with Race to the Top and our No Child Left Behind waiver. And I think, I don't know, Commissioner can jump in if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think generally when we talk about, the sort of trends that we see in our achievement growth. It's those three things: the rigor, then supporting the educators in meeting that rigor, and aligning your direction, across the state.
Okay, other questions?
Question. Throughout the implementation process of Race to the Top and even Common Core, what has been the level of buy-in and support from teachers in the classroom, and how have their opinions been integrated into the discussion?
That's a great question. So one of the initiatives we did through Race to the Top was to implement what we call the TEL survey. It's Teaching, Empowering, Leading, and Learning. And that has been our primary mechanism to get direct feedback from teachers, along with one additional survey that we have done through Vanderbilt University through our, we created 10Cred, which is a research consortium designed to get at looking at Race to the Top. And to your question, sir, we'll have sort of some more sophisticated research analysis down the road, but that takes a bit of time. But so through those two surveys, we've been able to get feedback from educators throughout the process, both in terms of their working conditions at their school and how they're feeling about things in their school, and then the Vanderbilt survey a little bit more about the evaluation process. And I'm speaking in grave generalizations here, but generally we've seen a positive trend a positive upward trend in agreement with responses from the first time that we did the survey through the most recent.
And to what extent have maybe dissenting opinions or constructive criticisms have they been incorporated into implementation plans?
Yeah, so we are constantly keeping a focus on continuous improvement throughout this whole process. And so through our different initiatives, particularly the ones that have impacted teachers most, so Common Core and evaluation, those teams, first of all, internally, we've done a lot to provide opportunities for communication. So we have rapid response emails, and we receive thousands of emails and respond to them from teachers and principals and district staff. And so we're trying to keep that direct communication open and have a place to receive that kind of criticism and really examine it. And then early on, SCORE and Vanderbilt both did a pretty massive listening tour across the state. And we took a lot of the information that was gathered through that and used it to inform the adjustments we've made, both specifically to our evaluation system over the last few years, and some to our Common Core, training experiences from one summer to the next.
Okay, other questions? Victoria?
Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, Chairman Ralston, members of the State Board, and the Higher Education Commission, Commissioner Huffman, and Dr. Rhoda. I'm going to talk. My name is Victoria Harpool. I'm the program coordinator for the Race to the Top projects housed here at THEC. And I wanted to give you an overview of the projects that we worked on as part of the Race to the Top and provide information on the impact that these projects have had on education in the state of Tennessee. I'll be talking to you about 6 projects that we've been working on here at THEC. Each of these projects has occurred in collaboration with the Department of Education, and they've really been great partners to work with through this process. So we have our STEM professional development, our UTeach replication, integrating TVOS in higher education, integrating Common Core in higher education, teacher training, program report card, and a school leader study. So the STEM professional development, the goal here of these grants is to provide innovative practices in K-12 STEM subjects by developing teachers' content and pedagogy knowledge using the experience of Tennessee higher education institutions. During Race to the Top, 29 grants were given to 8 different higher education institutions to provide professional development to 600 K-12 teachers in 57 counties across the state of Tennessee. The UTeach replication is a model that for teaching and training STEM teachers that came out of the University of Tennessee at Austin. What it allows graduates to do is gain both a STEM degree as well as an education degree. The goal of replicating the UTeach program was to increase the number of high-quality STEM teachers in Tennessee As of May 2014, we will have 50 graduates of the UTeach program that will have graduated and be licensed to teach STEM in the state of Tennessee. The TVOS portion of what we've been able to do with higher education had 3 parts. We had a set of e-learning modules. We've given data to higher education institutions about the effectiveness of their graduates, as well as a project we're calling Advanced Analytics. So the TVOS learning modules, the goal here is to increase the understanding of value-added data for institutions of higher education in order to assist pre-service teachers in better using data to meet the unique needs of their students. Over 250 professors have incorporated these e-learning modules into their teacher training programs across the state. So the TVOS for higher education institutions. With the change of statute, teacher preparations are now allowed to have access to individual completer data 3 years back. Through partnership with the Tennessee Department of Education and SAS, we're able to provide this information to all teacher training programs throughout the state through a secure web portal. The information and diagnostic reports will allow programs to make more targeted, data-driven decisions about their program and about improvements that can be made to their program. What we're calling the Advanced Analytics is a project that was really born out of a desire to provide institutions the opportunity to gain greater insight into the factors that affect future performance and effectiveness of teachers. Some of the research questions we've come up with will look at how particular admission criteria, programs of study, and field experience affects future effectiveness. We're currently in the final stages of data submission. Programs will receive a private, individualized report that looks at their completers and how these factors affect their future performance of their completers. In addition, there will be a statewide public report that will not have individual institutions named in it, but will look and add to the body of research on teacher effectiveness across the nation. The next project that we worked on was helping higher education institutions integrate the Common Core standards into their pre-service curriculum. So the project goal was to increase the understanding of the Common Core and assist programs to incorporate those more rigorous standards. Thus far, we've created 12 video modules and the accompanying resources that have been produced looking at full-length Common Core aligned lessons taught by proven effective Tennessee teachers. So Tennessee teachers can see and help train those pre-service Tennessee teachers, which is something we were really proud of. Over 500 higher education faculty members across the state have attended professional development around these modules, and we've had a real positive feedback. The teacher training report card is a public report that's required by statute, and THEC currently has the privilege of compiling that report. The report has 2 goals. The first is to allow training programs data from which to make improvements, and the second is to provide the public information on the effectiveness of teacher program completers. The report has been expanded under Race to the Top. Most significantly is the inclusion of effectiveness data over time through multiple years of the report card, so institutions can get an idea of how over time they've been doing in preparing their teachers. The last is the school leader study, which is very similar to the idea of the teacher prep report card, and to provide institutions information about their school leader graduates, so principals, vice principals, instructional leaders, provide the data necessary to make, again, those targeted program improvements, and also give the public a sense of how these graduates are doing. We hope to have the first report out this spring, and the institutions, again, like you saw with the Advanced Analytics, this first year for this report, the individual institutions will receive a private report about their specific program completers, and there will be a statewide look in which individual programs are not identified, but a look as where as a whole are we with school leaders as far as preparation, as far as where are they going, what kinds of schools are they teaching in, and what does their effectiveness look like. And now we'll have Troy Grant.
Good afternoon. My name is Troy Grant. I'm the Director of P16 Initiatives here at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. The last of the THEC Race to the Top projects is the creation of the Tennessee College Access and Success Network. Started in 2010 with a grant to THEC from the Lumina Foundation. The network was bolstered and expanded with Race to the Top funding. The goals of the network are driven by a mission to increase the number of Tennesseans who are completing a post-secondary credential, and they work in really 4 different spheres. One is connecting like-minded individuals and organizations around a college completion agenda. The second is to expand college access and success programming across the state. The third, provide professional development opportunities to TCAS and members, and finally support policies across the state that really engender a space where college completion can thrive within Tennessee. Just a couple of outcomes to point out. The network has sub-granted out Race to Top funds out to LEAs and to nonprofit organizations across the state, 50 of them, and it's $1.6 million, providing college access and success service to over 60,000 high school students, middle school students, and families. Also, professional development is a cornerstone of the work of the network. They've held 3 annual conferences bringing together college access professionals and LEA representatives and higher education across the state to discuss higher education and the completion agenda. Also, they are working with Lipscomb's Air Institute for Teacher Innovation to create a professional development series of modules for school counselors and for college access professionals. There's a void. If you look at school counselors and their professional training, there is no college access piece of that training. So they're looking to fill that void. Finally, they are working on several policy initiatives, have published several white papers around college access and success and aligned with their mission. So with that, I'd open up to any questions for this initiative or any for Victoria.
Questions?
I just have
Yes,
one question.
Teresa.
You know, just the teacher training report card that you mentioned has been just a helpful tool for institutions and for policymakers. When you mentioned the school leaders study, do you expect to do that same report card type evaluation?
Yes, it'll follow a similar format, though we're hoping to include some indicators that are more unique to school leaders. Obviously, a school-wide value added, but then the survey that Megan mentioned, the TEL survey that looks at the environment that the principal or vice principal creates for teachers. So those kinds of indicators that are unique to school leaders. But in its first iteration, the individual institution reports will be private for the use of the institution, but we'll have the statewide report. As we go forward, yes, we'd like to have very similar individualized reports that are compiled and published both for the institution's use and for the public.
Perhaps I got one question.
Okay, Cato.
Troy, is there any synergy between what you just presented here and the GEAR program?
Oh, absolutely. Beyond that, there are several staff members who once worked on the GEAR program. I think that we partner with them in professional development. They manage our youth summits where we bring in our students. And so there's a lot of alignment between the work that we're doing across all of our college access programs and the professional development and offerings of the network.
Okay, other questions? I think one thing that we can be very proud of is the way that the state has gone about implementing the Race to the Top funding that we have received. I spent a fair amount of time in Washington Department of Education as part of the National Assessment Governing Board, and I hear all kinds of complaints up there about what other states are not doing or the way that they're going about spending Race to the Top funds or not living up to their commitments. And I'm basically hearing no complaints about what Tennessee is doing. So maybe it's just because they know I'm from Tennessee, but I think really, truly, at least what I'm hearing is that Tennessee is doing a much better job with that than the other states that participated in that program. So something we can be proud of. One other thing that I think it's important. I think we're achieving some great results, and I think the NAEP results that we talked about earlier are really indicative of the progress that we're making in K-12. And I think we would not be doing that if we didn't have good buy-in from the teachers. Basically the teachers are the ones that's making that happen, teachers and the students both. And we're expecting an awful lot, a lot of changes. The increased expectations, the curriculum, everything we put together. We've got a big load on teachers, and to hear some teachers who are not totally comfortable with all that, I think is natural. But I think the results we're receiving obviously has to suggest that teachers are responding to what we're doing, or buying into the new curriculum, the expectations that are out there, and I think that's critical. But I don't think we ought to be surprised to find some teachers that are not totally comfortable with everything that's going on. Okay, very good. We'll now move to the annual joint report. Kimberly, you going to start with that, and then Dale or Scott, rather?
Emily's got it. Does anyone not have a copy of the joint report at the table who would like one?
I think some of the state board commission members may not have gotten a copy yet, so Emily and Scott will. So, good afternoon to the Joint Commission. My name is Kim Martin, and I work for THEC. So this is, I'm going to give you a little quick update of the joint report this year. The State Board and the Tennessee Higher Education Commission are required to annually create a report that speaks to the joint efforts between both entities. And specifically, this joint report looks at 4 different sections. The first is minimizing duplication in elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education, compatibility between high school graduation requirements and admission requirements of post-secondary institutions, master plan fulfillment. This is the extent to which respective master plans of the board and the Higher Education Commission are being met. And we also look at the extent to which state needs in public education are being met as determined by the board and commission. This has to do a lot with all of the great programs that you all have been hearing about all day long. So as I mentioned today, I'll just be very briefly giving you an update on what is new in the joint report this year. So first, when it comes to minimizing duplication, one thing that we're very excited about is the Tennessee Longitudinal Data System. This is something that should be ready this spring, and this is a joint effort between the Department of Education, THEC, the Center for Business and Economic Research at UT, and the Department of Labor and Workforce Development here in Tennessee. So what we're doing essentially is integrating the P through 20 data system so that student information can be tracked through all grades, post-secondary education, and even into students' careers. So we're not actually creating more data, we're just taking what we have, what's at the Department of Education, what's at THEC, what's at the Department of Labor, and we're combining it together. This gives us a really great opportunity to answer a lot of research questions that we may not have been able to answer before. Like, for example, if certain students aren't having a lot of success at a university or graduating, what we can do is go back and look at what happened in middle school, high school, elementary school, and see if there are certain factors that might have contributed to that lack of success down the road. Okay, so the second section, compatibility, the requirements for this section were achieved several years ago when the State Board, THEC, Department of Education took on the task of clarifying high school graduation requirements and aligning high school course offerings to meet university admission standards. So the new requirements for high school graduation and undergraduate admissions have already been fully implemented, and they are, if you want to see the actual courses and standards, they are in Appendix A and B in the joint report. Okay, number 3, master plan fulfillment. I'll speak to a little bit about what we're doing at THEC. So at THEC we had the public agenda, and what we initially did was set an ambitious goal for ourselves, and that was to get Tennessee to the national average for educational attainment by the year 2025. Well, now we have taken on an even more challenging and more ambitious goal of reaching 55% educational attainment by the year 2025. The drive to 25, which we've talked a lot about today, is critical to our long-term success, and it is a long-term goal, essentially. So really, if you think about it, all the students who are going to be helping us get to our goal of 2025 are in elementary school and middle school right now. So at no time has collaboration between K through 12 and higher ed been more important, essentially. Okay, and you all have heard a lot of great summaries, a lot of great updates on the programs that we've been working on. Scott, the State Board of Education, is going to talk about the Science Education Review Plan. Sarah Hayburn, Department of Ed, is going to talk about teacher evaluations in Tennessee. You've already heard about Race to the Top, Gear Up, and there's another great program that we didn't mention yet today, and that's Core to College, which is focuses on sort of two projects. It really helps align Common Core standards with entry-level courses in math and English in colleges. And it also helps to promote better communication with K through 12 and higher education around curriculum alignments. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Thank you, Emily. Good afternoon, members of the Commission, members of the Board. Good to be with you this afternoon. We're legislatively required to compile this report for you each year, and so we try to make it interesting so that it's a little more exciting than bedtime reading. We try to make it a one-stop shop for you to get all the valuable statistics and data and information that you need of what's happening on both the K-12 and the higher education side. But also we want to take this opportunity to keep you apprised of emerging issues that are coming up on both sides of higher ed and K-12 that need to be on your radar that you might want to be aware of. On the K-12 side, there's a couple of, if you'll turn to page 16 in your report with me, please. The BEP committee meets annually. We're required to meet 4 times a year, sometimes more, and we engage ourselves in really rigorous conversation about the funding formula and what's necessary, what components need to be changed. For the past couple of years, the BEP committee has been fervently engaged in conversations about teacher salaries. And the BEP committee was delighted this past fall when Governor Haslam made that exciting announcement about committing Tennessee to being the fastest improving state in terms of teacher salaries. So the BEP committee certainly wanted to echo that commitment, and you can see the recommendation that they passed on page 16. I'm not going to read it verbatim for you, but in essence, the BEP committee is saying, yes, we want to be 100% behind that commitment. We want to look at market pay analysis and see how we can actually attract and retain high-quality teachers into the field. So we began looking intently at particularly STEM-related teaching positions this fall and comparing them to STEM-related fields, looking at what our teachers could make if they chose to, instead of going to the classroom, if they went into a math or science-related job, and see what those gaps were in terms of salaries and funding. So we had some great conversation that we'll be continuing this fall in terms of teacher salaries. Another emerging issue that we want you to be well aware of is the K-12 science standards. So we have formed a steering committee that met for the first time this past December, and if you'll turn to page 17, you'll see the list of the steering committee members. So we believe that we have the right people in the right place to help us make a more than an adequate decision about the current state of our K-12 science standards and what needs to be done, what needs to be overhauled, and who's appropriate to do that. So that committee will be meeting again on February the 28th and be focused on setting a vision for what Tennessee science standards should entail, and the revision process for those standards. The writing committee teams will be coming together. We will be using many Tennesseans across the state to be involved in that process to bring ultimately a set of revised science standards to the State Board of Education next fall, and hopefully complete the process by this time next year so we can move through the phase of adopting textbooks and revising state assessments, etc. The timetable for those science standards revisions are provided for you on page 18. The third thing I want to bring to your attention today is an update on the teacher evaluation system, and the department, under the leadership of Dr. Sarah Hayburn, and I want to ask her to come on forward, has prepared a marvelous report on the on teacher evaluation, which I've included in its entirety in this joint report for you. We thought it needed a double dip. If you didn't read it the first time, you get to read it this time. So take this one home, put it on your bedstand tonight, and enjoy the reading, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hayburn to give us an update on teacher evaluations.
Scott, I'm going to put my slides on.
Which one's is yours called? Oh, that
Right there, yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I don't know about sleeping on that report. That may be going overboard. But we did spend a good bit of time on it, and I hope you find it helpful, at least the executive summary. I did, let's see, to click. Okay. Wanted to be brief, and I think I'm the last thing standing between you and the end of this meeting, so I promise not to be long-winded, but wanted to give you just a little bit of background and context for the report that you have before you, including a recap of our second year of implementation, both the changes that we made prior to that year, as well as some of the key things that we learned during that second year of implementation of our statewide teacher and principal evaluation system. The report also speaks to the changes that we made for this current year, which is our third year of implementation, the 13-14 school year, and then just a few thoughts about, again, where we see this work as we look ahead. So again, just by way of context, I know, if not all, most of you are aware of the First at the Top Act that was passed in a special session back in January 2010. But that's really what put into motion this idea of an annual multiple measure teacher and principal evaluation system that was focused largely on student achievement and student growth. And so our first year of implementation of that system, per that statute that was passed in 2010, was in the 2011 and 12 school year. After that first year, we issued a report that was required by the legislature to reflect on the feedback that we had gathered over the course of that first year. We partnered with SCORE. I don't know if David's still here, but they did a fabulous job helping us to really solicit feedback from teachers and principals and stakeholders during that first year of implementation, because we all recognized that this really was a culture change. It was a sea change in what we were asking of our principals and our teachers and the way that we were thinking about performance. So we spent, again, a good bit of time on that report that was released in the summer of 2012. And what we saw by doing that was that that really provided a very transparent way to share with the state what we're learning in the teacher evaluation implementation process. And so we committed, though not required by statute any longer, to doing that kind of an annual report following each year of implementation for the foreseeable future. So what you have before you, again, is the second report on implementation of this system. And as it describes, we continued to learn a lot about the measures of effective teaching, how you can use those measures to really drive the development of all teachers, and what it means to get really high-quality feedback and support through evaluation and development. So again, to recap our year two changes, and these were things that happened prior to 2012-13, many of them required legislative change. Some of them were policy changes. But just kind of to recap quickly the changes that were made between the first year and the second year of implementation. We made some changes to the school-wide growth scores. It was no longer a 3-year average that was used at the school level, but we went to 1-year averages, and again, that was based on feedback from stakeholders. Another big change regarding student growth or teacher growth scores was to include students with disabilities in individual teacher effectiveness growth scores, and that was an important change we felt to make in order to make sure that those students were represented in the teacher effectiveness measures, the individual TVAS. There was also a new option for teachers in 12-13 who received the highest growth scores. And again, this would allow them, at the discretion of their district, to use their growth score for 100% of their evaluation if the district chose to do that and if it was to advantage the teachers. This was simply to give teachers an additional option if it would benefit them in terms of using their growth score for a greater percentage than is typically used in evaluation. We also made a policy change that allowed observers to differentiate the time they spent with teachers based on prior performance. So in year one, the number of required observations was determined by whether someone was on an apprentice license, that initial license, or whether they were on a professional license, so a more veteran teacher. And what we saw and what we heard in year one was that folks really wanted to differentiate the time they were spending with teachers based on prior performance. So recognizing that all teachers need feedback at all levels of performance, they really wanted to be able to spend more time with teachers who are struggling. So that was a change that we made for year two to allow for that prior performance determination. And then lastly, we increased the flexibility that districts could apply for in terms of how they implemented the state model. So while there are a number of things that are prescribed by statute and by policy, there's still quite a bit of flexibility actually for districts in terms of some of the kind of nuts and bolts of implementation. So we received over 40 plans in that second year from districts, kind of tailoring the model more specifically to their context. So what did we learn in that second year? And again, this is kind of the body of that report, but just to give you some of the highlights, we were really pleased to see that the perception of evaluation in Tennessee changed pretty dramatically between first year and second year implementation. So Megan, I think, mentioned before the 10 cred survey that we do on all our Race to the Top work in partnership with Vanderbilt University. And that survey specifically really showed us that, again, we still have a ways to go in terms of the culture change that this evaluation system has called for, but educators' perceptions, both teachers and principals, really improved significantly in that second year in terms of the perception of it being fair and that it is something that's driving instructional improvement. We also saw in the second year that observation scores had a stronger relationship with student achievement indicators. So this is looking at the multiple measures and looking to see, how are observers doing and the feedback that they're giving teachers. Is there a logical relationship between the feedback that they're getting through the observation process and what we're seeing on the student growth, kind of the more quantitative measures? And not that you would expect to see those things exactly in alignment. They're capturing in some ways some slightly different things, but you would expect to see some sort of relationship. And we saw that relationship strengthen in the second year, which again leads us to believe that observers are doing a better job of giving feedback to teachers. We also increased the number of teachers who received individual growth scores. So as you know, with TVAS, you're really just looking at the state assessments and generating data based on any grade or subject that has a state assessment associated with it, which is roughly a third of our teachers. And we've been in the process over the last couple of years of working with various educator groups in non-tested areas to determine if there is an alternate measure that could be piloted and approved to generate growth scores in some of those areas where they don't have a state assessment. And some of our educator groups have indicated that that doesn't make sense. For instance, librarians have said school level scores are a better option for them in terms of the literacy work that they do with all students. But some grades and subjects, like fine arts, for an example, have really rallied around this as an opportunity to think about, as a profession of fine arts teachers, what does it look like to show growth in the fine arts? So we've had some really fabulous work in partnership with educators, and we've increased by 20% the number of teachers who have individual growth scores. We also did a lot of work in year two, again, based on year one data, having a baseline to work from, to identify observers who are really struggling to provide high quality feedback to teachers. And we were able to increase the number of team coaches, team being the evaluation system, that we have throughout the state. So we had one in year two in every region, whereas the first year we just had one for every two regions. So we increased the number of coaches that were working with struggling observers, and we saw that pay dividends in terms of those observers' ability to improve the quality of feedback to teachers. And then finally, we did a lot of piloting of student surveys. So the tripod survey, which had been used in Memphis as part of the MET work through the Gates Foundation, was something that we had other districts who were interested in piloting. And so in year two, we did some extensive piloting of the student survey across our various districts. And that simply is a pretty tailored survey that allows students to provide input as to what's happening in the classroom. And it's done in a very careful way to not bias their preference for a teacher or personality at all, but it really looks at the kinds of things that are happening in the classroom in terms of instructional activities and the kinds of things that you can assess in a more objective way. And again, I mentioned before, but we had over 40 districts who made modifications under the flexibility plans. And this is just, again, further tailoring the types of observations and some of the nuts and bolts of implementation to better fit their local context. In terms of changes that we've made for this current year, so our third year of implementation, just a few things to highlight. And again, the report goes into much more detail. We increased the rigor and the comprehensiveness of the certification test. So for anyone who's performing observations of teachers across the state, they're required to be certified, and that requires generally going through training and passing a certification test. Since we were moving into our third year of implementation, we had a number of observers who had gone through two summers of pretty extensive training on this model, and we thought by upping the difficulty of the test and the comprehensiveness, we could allow some of those folks to opt out of training if they could prove through the certification test that they were, again, ready to take on those observations. So we increased the rigor and allowed people to opt out of training if they were able to pass the certification test going into year 3. We increased the number of team coaches again to support implementation. We'd seen in year 2 that was a really successful model for working with some of our observers who are struggling to give high quality feedback, and so we increased the number of coaches, and we also expanded their charge not only to work with individual schools and observers who are struggling, but to provide more support to districts and regions around best practices in implementation. So a lot of the things that we're learning, our team coaches are able to spread those practices throughout the districts that they work with. We also made some small revisions to the instructional rubric to reflect the Common Core language and to reflect those shifts that are required in instruction. So we wanted to make sure that our language was consistent in the way that we are talking about evaluation and the way that we're talking about Common Core. So again, based on feedback, we made some changes to the rubric itself. We introduced a new growth measure that was approved by the state board for world language teachers. So that's another option this year for districts to choose from for world language teachers. And we had some additional districts in this current year that are using student surveys at 5% of the overall score. So we have just over 20 districts who are using student surveys currently at 5% of the overall teacher evaluation. And then finally, as we look ahead, the things that we are most excited about and that we think kind of hold the most promise, if you will, include video technology. I think there's tremendous upside in the ways that technology can continue to enhance the teacher evaluation system. And so we, through a Gates grant, have a number of our schools and districts that are using these 360-degree cameras to record what's happening in a classroom. And there's lots of things that they can do with that information. The first and probably most common is just reflection for the teacher. I mean, it's a pretty powerful thing to watch yourself teaching a lesson. I did that when I was teaching, and it's painful, but it's instructive. So we have a lot of folks that are using it for self-reflection. It's also a great tool for observers to do norming, so you can have a group of people look at a video of a given teacher and talk about how they would score it and really help to hone their norming of the rubric and the scoring. It's also something that's proven to be really beneficial for our rural districts where there may be one physics teacher, in a 200-mile radius, and so to pair them with a physics teacher in another part of the state for professional development is another thing that is exciting about the use of this technology. So I think we're just on the front end of learning about all of those possibilities, but again, something that we're excited about moving forward. I mentioned student surveys, so I won't talk too much more about that, but that's, again, a measure that allows all teachers to have an additional individual measure of their performance. So it's not just for teachers and tested grades and subjects, but it provides an individual reflective measure for all teachers that can give them some additional actionable feedback based on student feedback. The 15% component, so currently we have a student achievement measure as part of the overall evaluation system that is one that's selected by the teacher and the principal. It comes from a menu of options, and they set a scale and a score kind of goal associated with that measure. And we still feel like that needs additional study. We haven't seen that it's translated into very meaningful information as part of the evaluation system, and in fact, evaluators and teachers both have a lot of complaints about that component. So we're really carefully studying that this year to see what the future of the 15% should look like, and we'll come to the board with a recommendation about that, we hope, next summer. Just a couple other quick things. Non-differentiating observers. I mentioned before talking about the alignment between student growth and observations, and that's one of the ways that we've been able to provide additional support to observers who might be struggling to give accurate feedback to teachers. And another way that we're looking at that is where we have observers who give the same score to every teacher on every indicator. It's another indication that they may need some additional support. So that's something that we're looking at across the state in terms of how we can better assist the high quality implementation in every school. Administrator evaluation is also undergoing some changes. I could spend probably an hour on this, but just in a nutshell, we are in the process of piloting a revised instructional rubric for administrators. And this is based on a revision to the instructional leadership standards that the state board passed last spring. And so we think that this rubric represents a more focused vision for what effective principal work looks like and will help our superintendents and supervisors to better focus principals on that kind of core work. And so we have a number of schools and districts that are piloting that this year. We'll be doing extensive training and rollout across the state for that revised rubric next year. And then there are a number of places that we continue to research and to study, including how you can use the information that's provided through evaluation to better pair teachers for coaching. So how do you take really effective teachers and help use their skills and knowledge to support new teachers or struggling teachers. We're seeing a lot of practices that are promising around that, and we're working with various partners to study what works the best and how we can spread that more across the state. We continue to look at the rubric itself and to make sure that there's not additional changes that need to be made to the rubric, and so that's an area that we'll continue to study. And we're also really looking at the alternate models that some of our districts are using. We have a number of approved alternate models that are also interesting and provide some additional information for how we think about the best practices of teacher evaluation. And then finally, again, with the higher education folks in the room, we're thinking about how we can share this information back with our institutions of higher ed. And we're already seeing a lot of our institutions who are using the team rubric as part of their student teaching or assessment of student teachers. So we've got a lot of folks who are attending the team trainings each summer. They're using that information, those rubrics, as part of the kind of scaffolding of student teachers to prepare them for the classroom. And we want to think, too, with our partners at THEC about how we can share that evaluation data back with programs. So not just TVOS information, but additionally evaluation data that might be instructive to programs as they think about their completers and where they're strong and where they may have needed additional training. So I'll stop there. I've got one last slide that has my contact information as well as Luke Colmoose, who works on my team and lives and breathes this every day. He's a great contact if you have questions, but I'm happy to take questions if you have them, again, knowing that this is kind of the end of the meeting, so happy to talk or not.
Okay, questions for Sarah? Any questions? Or Scott? Others? Thank you. Thanks. Any, that gets us to the end of our planned agenda. Any other questions that you may have, comments, so forth? Cato, anything?
Excellent presentation. Go and do good.
That's good advice. I think it is important, given where we are, that we all support the efforts that are being made on Common Core and Park. I think it's terribly critical at this point. It's a critical part of our overall improvement plan. So I encourage you to support that every opportunity you get. Any further comments? Okay. Again, good presentations. Appreciate it. And meeting is adjourned.
Excellent job.
Great. Thank you, sir. Good meeting you. Good meeting you too.